Arc 4. Slapping the Pretending to be Poor, Rich Second Generation. Chapter 1. Xu Sheng and the Tianqi Emperor stayed together for a lifetime, but they never had a red face. Before the Tianqi Emperor's death, he'd firmly pulled his hand, desiring to take him with him. His eyes, full of crazy love, was touching. Zhu Yunsheng didn't hesitate to agree. After seeing his instantly brighter eyes, he deeply felt that he'd made the correct decision. Back in the Xianghai space, he stood in the stars to absorb the world's power. But he sensed that half of the power of the whirlpool had been extracted. He couldn't detect where it had flown. How was this possible? Could it be the Lord God? He frowned and soon rejected this idea. If the Lord God could plunder his power, it would have already discovered his existence and was sure to think of ways to kill him. But now had no signs of movement. It was obviously not the Lord God. So who could it be? An idea faintly emerged, but he didn't dare ponder on it. He feared that the greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. After absorbing the power, he fell into a deep sleep. When he woke up again, he was sitting in a bright classroom, a loud sound of reading in his surroundings. He glanced at the English book in his hand and immediately found the part that was being read aloud. While following the crowd, he quickly scanned the contents of the AI. After visiting many stallion upgrade-style worlds, he finally entered a BL world. The body was named Lin Chengze. His parents were dead, leaving him hundreds of thousands in bank savings and an apartment. The original owner could have relied on this money to study until university, then look for a job, living a smooth and steady life. But he happened to be a very vain person. He had serious money worship. When his parents were alive, he wore brand-named clothes and watches, but after his parents died, his lack of self-control intensified. Hundreds of thousands in saving was soon squandered by him, leaving nothing left. Having no alternatives, his thoughts went awry. He was gay and had a strong sense for the same kind. He found out that a rich second generation in his class was also gay, so he deliberately seduced him. The boy was very promiscuous. He originally wanted to play with him, then get rid of him with some money. How could he expect to overhear Lin Chengse chatting with a close friend in the bathroom, saying that he just wanted him for his money, and also saying that he had more money than sense, etc. The rich second generation felt humiliated. He wanted to rush in and teach him a lesson, but was stopped by a meddlesome friend. They said that it would be better to play with Lin Chengse than throw him away, letting him regret his actions and lose all face. The rich second generation thought it was a good idea, so he pretended to be bankrupt and looked to Lin Chengse for refuge, while also intentionally introducing Lin Chengse to his wealthy friends. Lin Chengse unknowingly stepped into his trap. Although he didn't break up with the rich second generation, he secretly began seducing his friends and was played with and passed around, photographed in many unsightly situations. If that was the end, then that would have been okay. But in the process, this rich second generation unexpectedly fell in love with Lin Chengse's best friend. When they were discovered by Lin Chengze, the rich second generation bluntly laid his cards on the table, exposing that everything was a scam. While Lin Chengze was astonished, those photos were posted on the school wall by the rich second generation. Not only did Lin Chengze lose his friends, he also lost the opportunity to take the college entrance exam. He eventually had to rely on selling his body to live, then finally contracted AIDS and died like that. After his death, his best friend just sighed, and the rich second generation just scolded that he deserved it. After looking over Lin Shengzi's life, Zhou Sheng's face turned completely black. He slowly looked towards the handsome boy sitting on his right. This person was the rich second generation that pretended to be poor, this world's protagonist's gong, Ji Han Yu. The protagonist show was the original owner's best friend, Fang Yuran. He wanted to be He went to a different school and was the white lotus type. Between a green tea bitch and a white lotus, you didn't need to think to know who the protagonist Gong would love. At present, Ji Han Yu had already faked bankruptcy and was living in Lin Shengzi's home. Furthermore, he'd developed inexplicable feelings for Lin Shengzi's best friend and roommate, Fang Yuran, and was secretly seducing him. And under Ji Han Yu's inducement, Lin Shengzi fell for his uncle, Cao Mo Kun, and was also secretly seducing him. Of course, Ji Han Yu's love eventually came to fruition, while Cao Mo Kun regarded Lin Shengzi as heir. Lin Shengzi repeatedly hinted to Cao Mo Kun, but he didn't respond. He eventually had no choice but to transfer his target to seduce others, which set his cursed future in stone. Understanding his situation, Zhu Yunsheng wiped the expression of his face and looked over Lin Shengzi's death regrets. The first regret was falling into Ji Han Yu's trap and being completely ruined. The second regret was not taking the college entrance exam and studying in college. The third regret was being reduced to prostitution and not being able to support himself financially. Fortunately, the current Lin Shengzi had only just started seducing Cao Mo Kun. The other man was a mature adult, not willing to bother with him, so he had merely privately warned his nephew to not be cheated. So he still had time to avoid the pornographic incident. The last two wishes were simply a piece of cake for Zhou Yunsheng, whose IQ reached up to 180. Thinking of this world was also not too terrible. Zhou Yunsheng picked up his English book and narrowed his eyes, smiling. As a petty, revengeful villain, only avoiding the danger was not his style. He also planned to ruthlessly slap Ji Han Yu's face to let him understand that the world didn't revolve around him. Shengzi, let's go. When the bell rang, Ji Han Yu picked up his school bag and kicked Zhou Yunsheng's chair. He couldn't wait to see Fang Yuran. Yup, wait for me. Zhou Yunsheng leisurely packed his bag. Ji Han Yu's face betrayed annoyance, quickly exchanging a malicious look with several of his friends by the classroom door. All right, let's go. Zhou Yunsheng pretended not to notice, throwing the school bag over his shoulder and walking ahead. Back home, Fang Yudan was wearing a Winnie the Pooh apron and cooking in the kitchen. His pretty face was smoked red by the stove. He looked very fresh and lovely. Ji Han Yu's eyes brightened slightly. He immediately flung his school bag onto the sofa and walked in to help. The two bumped heads, speaking in whispers. They looked very close. Lin Shengzi thought that the kitchen was disgusting. He wouldn't voluntarily set foot in it, so he never noticed the ambiguous actions between the two. Now, Zhou Yunsheng also wouldn't join in the fun, carrying his bag directly into his room. Fang Yuran was an orphan, a typical gentle and virtuous wife. With him at home, everything was spotless. Compared to Lin Shengzi, the indifferent and vain gold digger, Ji Han Yu would naturally fall in love with Fang Yuran. At this point, the two have shared their first kiss. Although Ji Han Yu forced it on Fang Yuran, Ji Han Yu's story about his family being on the verge of bankruptcy was also true because his father had offended Cao Mo Kun, so the Kao group was putting pressure on them. Kao Mukun was known as the Great White Shark in the business world. Regardless of if it was small fish or shrimp, anyone who entered his mouth was chewed to bits. Although Jihanyu's mother was from the Kao family, she was an illegitimate child. Kao Mokun had no feelings for her, so of course he wouldn't care if the result of his action destroyed their marriage. But Jihanyu was clever. He'd carried favor with him from a young age, so Kao Mokun still had a bit of affection for him. He would also occasionally take him out to eat, especially after his family came to the verge of bankruptcy. Lin Xingzi took a fancy to Kao Mokun after being invited to one of these dinners. Actually, the family's bankruptcy didn't greatly impact Jihan Yu. He was extremely smart. Under his uncle's training, he had already established his own company, and the profits were very good. Ji's father kept a group of mistresses who gave birth to a football team of illegitimate children. He was looking forward to Ji's father's bankruptcy to devastate the mistresses and illegitimate children. Now he was happily watching Ji's father break under the pressure and even had the move to court. Where was that poverty-stricken person Lin Jingse thought him to be? Zhou Yunsheng casually threw his school bag on the bed and went into the bedroom to examine his body. No wonder Lin Shengze later became the club's #1 callboy. He had always lived in luxury, so his appearance was really worth of being called gorgeous. White, lustrous, jade-like skin, slender eyebrows, straight and tall nose, bright red lips, plus a pair of clear, watery peach blossom eyes. Now the frivolous expression in his eyes was gone and only cunning intelligence remained, requiring only one look to steal a person's 3 immortal souls and 7 mortal forms. Blame him for knowing that he looked outstanding, thinking that any mistake he made would be forgiven. Because of this, he actually indulgently still too naive. He acted indulgently, still too naive. Zhou Yunsheng attached great importance to good looks, so he was naturally very satisfied with the original owner's features. He quickly bathed, then opened the computer to play games. He was in Dazhou for decades and had almost forgotten the touch of a keyboard. After playing for about half an hour, Fang Yunan shouted outside the door, "Shengze, supper time!" Jun Sheng shouted an acknowledgement, then decided to check Shengze's bank account before shutting off the device. His face immediately turned green. There was only $200 left in the account. No wonder he was so desperate to leave Jihanyu and find a new sugar daddy. It was like this. If it was like this, self-reliance was the first regret he was going to have to resolve. Although he just had to move his fingertips to hack into the bank treasury, this was not self-reliance, it was a crime. Lin Shengze had already gone wrong once. He couldn't go wrong a second time. Plus, as a qualified pretender, he preferred using the original owner's skills to make a living. This not only suited his tastes, it also increased his survival skills. Whenever he played the villain, he would seriously study and improve on all of the body's skills, until he was better than the original. Of course, in cases like Shen Yibin, where he had no talent and was forced into a dead end, he could only improvise. What were Lin Shengxi's skills? Thinking about it, it seemed that his extreme attractiveness was the only feature. Zhou Yunsheng squinted. He felt that in this Lucasm-focused world, having his features was already enough. While he was thinking about his future plans, he walked into the dining room and saw Ji Hanyu helping Fang Yudan serve food, reminding the other boy to be careful not to burn his hands. "Dig in." Zhu Yunsheng sat down and tapped his fingers on the tabletop. His high arrogance leaked for a brief moment, then quickly disappeared. Hanyu and Fang Yudan didn't notice, passing food to each other. When are you going home? Your mother must be very sad, right? You haven't gone back to check on her. Zhu Yunsheng asked, seemingly indifferently. She doesn't need me to check on her. She already ran away with a new man. Ji Hanyu sneered. Fang Yudan looked at him distressed. Zhu Yunsheng clipped a piece of tofu and continued. Then, what are you going to do? Continuing pursuing my darling and playing you along the way. Ji Hanyu sneered in his heart, but his face exposed an embarrassed expression. He sighed. I plan to work while studying. A while ago, Wang Ji asked me to open a factory with him, but I don't have the capital. How much do you need? I can lend it to you. I've saved up a little money from work. Fang Yudan immediately asked. Ji Hanyu smiled, not a fake smile, but a smile from the heart. How can I take your money? I need about 300,000. You can't get that much, even if you sell yourself. It'd be better to use your money to buy yourself a few down jackets. It's winter, but you only wear 2 sweaters and a light coat. Aren't you afraid of the cold? Fang Yudan's nature was thrifty and kind-hearted. Even though he was poor, he unreservedly offered to help others. These qualities really tempted Ji Hanyu. In contrast to Lin Shengxie, who was burying his head in his food, pretending to hear nothing, the superior one was immediately apparent. Chapter 2. After dinner, Fang Yudan went to the kitchen to wash the dishes, and Ji Hanyu was lying on the sofa watching TV. Zhu Yunsheng sat down beside him and asked in a low voice, If you're short on money, why don't you ask your uncle for it? The Kao family has plenty of money. Ji Hanyu was obviously very disgusted hearing the word money come out of his mouth. He looked a little impatient. Money, that's not mine. It's my uncle's. Besides, don't you know? Although my mother is surnamed Kao, she's only an illegitimate child. Whenever we visit home, it almost infuriated my grandmother that it would be strange if my uncle helped us. No way. He really seems to be fond of you. Doesn't he always invite you out for dinner? Jing Shang persistently questioned. Where is he inviting me to dinner? He just wants to appreciate me and my mother's miserable expressions. The Ji family's collapse is his handiwork. He doesn't care about our family, care about our life and death. If I wasn't afraid of offending him, do you think I'd go to his dinners? All right, stop asking. It's annoying. Ji Hanyu threw him a sharp look. Shui Yunsheng was silent. He went back to his room and locked the door. Although Ji Hanyu was now Lin Shengzhe's boyfriend in name, because Lin Shengzhe was very well waxed in the art of seduction, they haven't had sex yet. Ji Hanyu originally moved into his house to take him to bed, but he fell for the angelic Fang Yudan in Lin Shengzhou's house. Since then, he always took the initiative to sleep on the sofa. For Shu Yunsheng, this was a blessing in disguise. Ji Hanyu, this hairless, late-stage chuny boy, rebellious teen, really wasn't his type. With only 200 remaining in the living expenses, the current Lin Shengzhe and Ji Hanyu actually relied on Fang Yudan's paycheck to support themselves. As a villain, Zhu Yunsheng was inevitably infected with the bad habit of enjoying luxury. It was simply unbearable to not have any money to spend freely. All right, I have to quickly find a fast and lucrative job. Zhu Yunsheng muttered while turning on his computer. His fingertips flew over the keyboard, filtering useful information. Lin Jingzi had no diploma or experience. Looking for a high-end job was out of the question. Fortunately, he was beautiful, so he could always sell a smile or something. Jun Sheng let his imagination run wild while invading every major entertainment company's official website. When he found something substantial, his fingertips paused. The screen that was flashing at lightning speed stopped, displaying a recruitment ad released on the Aya company's official website. Aya was the world's largest luxury goods company. Their sales included brand name bags, watches, custom made clothes, perfume, luxury cars, and other cutting edge products. Having an Aya luxury good was a sign of identity and status. Every time it launched a new product, the entire fashion industry vibrated. This time, Aya was launching a perfume to seize C country's perfume market. So they needed to select a model from C country to shoot a series of ads. Moreover, the requirement for the model was very unique. First, be beautiful. Additionally, a Helen of Troy grade beauty. Both man and woman are okay. Second, be young, preferably between 15 to 18 years old. Third, height of at least 175 centimeters. The skin must also be excellent. Don't apply if skin is not white and silky smooth. Fourth, temperament must be unique, both pure and tender, but also charming and immature. With these four conditions, you could simply screen out 80 to 90% of the entertainment industry. Julian Shang checked each requirement one by one. The corners of his mouth slowly rose. Lin Shengze was beauty, certified gorgeous. First item, check. Lin Shengze was 17 years old. Second item, check. Lin Shengze was 176 centimeters. As for his skin, Zhu Yunsheng's habit was to first adjust the physical data of the original owner to the optimal state. So now, whether it was appearance or constitution or skin, Lin Xingze was flawless. Third item, also check. As for the fourth, for others it would be a news, but for Zhou Yunsheng, this evil spirit that had reincarnated for thousands of years, it was simply a piece of cake. Mature, charming, pure, tender, gentle, ruthless, malevolent, upright. There were only qualities you've never imagined, not qualities he's never acted out. Since all the conditions were met, he'd take this one. Zhou Sheng stroked his jaw and planned how to infiltrate the audition. He hacked into a random entertainment company's official website, then used his superb hacking skill to create a performing artist identity for himself, linking it to a broker's name. As he needed to participate in the college entrance exam in June of next year, he signed a contract that expired next April. Then he hacked into Aya's official website and added his name to the list of candidates. After all this, he picked up the phone to contract his newly appointed agent. "Hey, this is Mei Lian. Who are you?" The keen-witted woman casually asked as she ignited the cigarette perched in her mouth. "Sister Yu, hello. I'm Lin Xingzi. I was originally one of Simon's artists, but I'm now under your name. I was transferred a while ago, but I'm only contacting you now. I'm sorry." Lin Xingzi's voice was clear and mellow, very enjoyable to listen to. Yu Mei Lian's slightly wrinkled brows relaxed a little. She recalled older artists under Simon. How come she'd never heard of Lin Xingzi? Simon died a few months ago in a car accident. Yu Mei Lian and the other agents divided up his most promising artists. Since this Lin Xingzi hadn't left an impression in her mind, he should be pretty mediocre. Thinking of this, Yu Mei Lian's slight interest dimmed. What was the use of only having a pleasant voice? You must also look good. The entertainment industry was a pure lookism world. She was about to give a few profound words and hang up the phone when a person on the other end gave her explosive news. Sister Yu, I was selected to attend Aya's interview tomorrow. Could you come pick me up? Wait, are you sure it was Aya? Yu Mei-lian's cigarette fell out of her mouth, almost burning a hole in her skirt. She jumped up, patting herself as she hurriedly walked. Aya was the most luxurious of luxury brands. Every spokesperson for their product was the most influential of international superstars. This time, they were picking a newcomer with great difficulty. Which entertainment company wasn't covetously eyeing the spot? Everyone was scrambling to break onto the interview lists. Yu Mei-lian had put all the stops to bring one of her artists into the interview, but they were ultimately rejected. Her rival was lucky enough to get a spot, but while Yu Mei-lian was busy sulking, a meat pie fell from the sky. She grabbed the phone, asking in a heavy voice, "How did you get the spot? Who managed you?" "No one managed me. I was taking a stroll when I bumped into a foreigner named Bonnie. He slipped me a business card and said I absolutely had to participate in the Aya interview. I didn't believe it before, but I just saw the list of candidates Aya announced. That's why I called you." Xuan Sheng's voice was very nervous, but his expression was lazy and leisurely, winding and unwinding a lock of hair on his forehead. "You wait there, I'll take a look." Yu Mei-lian pushed down her trembling heart to open Aya's official website. Sure enough, Lin Chengxi's name was on the list. Her heart jumped wildly for a moment. Then she opened the company's back end to access his artist profile. Lin Chengxi's extremely gorgeous face leaped out, freezing her in her seat. What the hell? Such a stunner? How did she miss him? Were her eyes blocked with feces? Fortunately, the artists left over from their selection were randomly assigned by the company. He just happened to be assigned to her name. Truly, when luck came, it was unstoppable. If Lin Chengxi couldn't become famous, then he was simply unworthy of the face God gave him. Yu Mei-lian took a few deep breaths. Only then did her voice sound much calmer. "Ah, I see it. You're on the list. Where do you live? I'll pick you up at 8:30 tomorrow." Julian Sheng reported an address, then hung up the phone. He rolled up in his quilt and fell asleep, relieved. The next day, Julian Cheng was eating breakfast while he explained to Ji Han-yu, "I won't be going to class for a while. Ask for a leave of absence for me." Ji Han-yu didn't care about his reasons, merely nodding. Julian Cheng glanced at him and said in a gentle tone, "Don't worry. Although the Ji family went bankrupt, we'll certainly think of a way out. Never say never." Ji Han-yu didn't even look back at him, saying a very perfunctory "ah," but in his heart he ridiculed Lin Chengxi's pretending. He obviously despised him to death, but still wouldn't break up with him. Wasn't he fancying his rich friends and wanted to use him to build a bridge? "As long as you dare to step on the bridge, I'll make you fall completely devastation." Last night, Fang Yudan was forcibly kissed by Ji Han-yu again, so this morning he was somewhat absent-minded. He didn't even dare speak to Lin Chengxi, and also didn't question his announcement. After breakfast, the two boys left for school together, and Zhou Yunsheng went back to his room to change into a white shirt and light blue jeans. He was pushing his phone into his pocket when it rang. It was Yu Mei-lian. "I'm here. Come downstairs. It's a black Audi car, license plate number XX66. Jun Sheng acknowledged her and leisurely took the elevator downstairs. When he got into the car, Yu Mei-lian sized him up from head to toe. Her eyes were pleased, like she'd pick up a treasure. "Stretch out your hand for me to feel. If your skin is not up to standard, we won't even bother to drive over." She presently took advantage, marveling at the delicate sensation under her fingertips. but he also touched me, so I took him for a pervert. Jun Cheng's cheeks reddened slightly. His beauty was even more eye-catching. Yu Mei Lian laughed. While driving, she inquired, "What year are you in?" "High school senior. I'm taking the college entrance exams in June." "Then what do you intend to do after that? Your parents are dead, so you must get a job to support yourself, right?" "I read your contract. It'll expire at the end of April. God gave this face to you. If you don't use it to make a living, it's simply a waste. As long as you're willing to renew the contract with me, I promise to turn you into an international star. Look at you now. No diploma, no work experience, and so young. The other companies won't want you. Not to mention the money you can make will be less." Yu Mei Lian spared no efforts to lobby, afraid of losing the treasure that fell into her hands. "Let's have this discussion after I finish shooting the ad. My parents always hoped that I'd go to a prestigious university. I want to realize their final wishes." Zhu Cheng exposed a timely, melancholic look. Yu Mei Lian went silent. After a moment, she teased, "What finish shooting the ad? You think you're guaranteed to get the spot?" Zhu Cheng looked askance at her, and his lips slightly raised. Those confident eyes and electric expression were too powerful. Yu Mei Lian couldn't endure it. She looked forward, flustered, but her heart was smiling in satisfaction. Chapter 3. They arrived at ISC Country Branch. The reception staff checked the list, then led him to the conference room on the 19th floor. "Yu Mei Lian, what are you doing here? Didn't Annie fail the selection?" a man wandering in the corridor asked in astonishment. "Annie lost, but Shengze was picked. Come, Shengze. This is Brother Wu Tao. He's one of our company's gold brokers." Yu Mei Lian beckoned. Wu Tao was still wondering who Shengze was, when he saw a tall and slender young man appear out from behind Yu Mei Lian. His slightly curved eyes flashed with moving vigor. His bright red lips evoked an alluring curvature. His presence outdid all the people waiting in the corridor. Everyone secretly sized him up, their hearts emerging with the same thought. No doubt, Aya's audition specs were simply tailored for him. "What's his full name? Where did you get him?" Wu Tao strived to pretend to be calm, quickly glancing at his own artist. He originally felt that her inequalities were ultra-high, but now everywhere was unpleasant to the eye, a typical case of apples to oranges. He was Simon's artist. Yu Mei Lian found a place for the young man to sit down, then turned her head to give Wu Tao a proud smile. "Impossible! How could I have overlooked him?" Wu Tao's expression was somewhat ugly. Because he had the highest qualifications, he got first pick of all the most promising artists. The rest were turned over to Yu Mei Lian and the other brokers. I guess he was a trump card, so Simon hit his profile. The remainder of our selection were all filled with the company, so he was randomly assigned to my name. His luck was also good. While walking on the street, a high-level representative of Aya saw him and recommended the interview. Yu Mei Lian pursed her lips in a giggle, happily appreciating Wu Tao's pale face. While the two brokers were getting chatty with each other, Zhu Cheng put on his headphones and quietly listened to music. The artist Wu Tao brought was Boa, a member of an idol group. Because her looks were delicate, her popularity was very high. When she'd first walked in, she'd looked left and right and concluded that those present weren't as outstanding as her. Her face couldn't help but reveal a haughty look. But now, seeing Lin Qingzi, her confidence dwindled to nothing. She quickly moved several seats away from him, afraid that sitting near him would make her look like mud. In the conference room, candidates came in one by one and were explosively thrown out one by one. As chief designer, also this perfumer, Orlando waved them away with a look of disgust. Your skin is not smooth or delicate enough. Out. You dare come in with this kind of look. Self-confidence is a good thing. Overconfidence is a bad thing. Out. How old are you? 15? Are you sure you're not 35? Those eye bags are hanging all the way to your nose. Out. I said, be mature and charming, yet pure and tender. But what is this? I can't tell whether she's an artist or a prostitute. Vulgar, simply too vulgar. Out, out, out. Orlando said dozens of out in a row, propping his forehead on his hand, feeling like he was going crazy. The staff who arranged for the audition was also quickly going mad because of him. Mature and charming, yet pure and tender. What kind of demon was this? Even if my English level was at a primary school level, I still know that the meaning of these words conflict each other, right? Even if it was such a diametrically opposed, contradictory temperament. Didn't someone accomplish it before? It looked very touching, right? Don't tell me your aesthetics have surpassed human limits. Orlando couldn't hear the staff's roasting, still continuing to take one glance at the candidates, then kicking them out. At last, it was Woodhouse artist Bow's turn. His eyes flashed slightly. He waved her over. Let me take a closer look. Boaz smiled secretly, walking up with graceful, small, quick steps. Orlando touched the back of her hand, his expression somewhat relaxed. Then he pinched her chin and examined her face. He nodded after a few minutes. You pass the requirements. Start the audition. Boa looked at the empty conference room, where only a flower pot of roses was placed in the middle, asking, How do I audition? Do you have a theme? Orlando replied with a rare bit of patience, crossing his arms. There is no theme. You just have to walk over and smell the roses. Sniffing flowers? Yes, this was a perfume ad. It was naturally important to show off the uniqueness of the fragrance. So after smelling, you had to look intoxicated, yet also show your most beautiful side. Bringing in a flowers are like their people, people are like their flowers theme. Boa consciously found her inspiration. Like a naive little girl, she bounced around as if she was in a magnificent garden enjoying playtime. Suddenly, she was attracted to an especially splendid cluster of roses. Her face exposed a gasping and admiration expression. She slowly approached, her footsteps graceful and relaxed, as if she was afraid to make the butterfly and the petal fly off. When she was finally in front of the flowers, she stooped and bowed her head, closing her eyes, expressing extremely intoxicated. Her exquisite profile and the fire-red roses complemented each other. The staff revealed satisfied smiles one after the other. Then they looked expectantly at Orlando. Out! You waste my time! Orlando opened, exasperated. Boa was frightened. She blinked her pair of almond eyes pitifully at him. Didn't you hear? Out! Get out! Orlando didn't know the meaning of tenderness to the fairer sex. He rolled the list of candidates into a paper tube and slapped it against the table, his eyes almost spraying fire. Boa was shamed to death. Covering her face, she ran out. The director responsible for shooting the ad couldn't stand it anymore. He tried to persuade. Orlando, that little girl was actually very good. She fully expressed the feeling you wanted. I read her profile. She fits the requirements the best. If you drive even her away, you might not be able to shoot this ad. Shooting doesn't change the theme. I would rather not have a model for this ad than masquerade with an inferior product. This fragrance is called extravagant. In your sea country's ancient history, extravagant and rotten had the same meaning. I want beautiful, extravagant beauty. Extreme beauty, near rotting beauty. Flowers exude the most attractive and most intense fragrance, only in full bloom and near rot. I want to find such a beauty. Beautiful to the extreme, beautiful until rotten, but also like a flower bud, full of life. Only such beauty is capable of matching with my perfume. Understand? The director and staff repeatedly nodded, suppressed by Orlando's language attainment, but they unanimously thought, "Are you sure your description is of a person and not a fairy? You might as well find a special effects company to shoot a 3D animated version of the ad. It'd at least be faster." Orlando arranged himself, then shouted, "Next!" Zhou Sheng was shaken back to life by Yu Meilian's shove. He removed his headset and slowly walked in. "Hello, I'm Huya Company's artist, Lin Shengze, 17 years old this year. Height 176 centimeters, weight 53 kilo." Orlando didn't wait for his introduction to be finished. He impatiently waving him over. "Quickly, come over. My God, you're finally here." Jin Shang walked over, his peach blossom eyes flashing a clever light. Orlando originally wanted to pinch his jaw, but his fingertips had barely touched his delicate skin when he paused. Then he carefully touched and kneaded. His eyes were like a searchlight, seizing him up inside and out several times. "Your appearance is very good. Start your audition." He pointed to the roses. The director and other staff had to admit that the young man's looks were far above Boas. He even outclassed Zhang Yijia, known as Sea Country's #1 beauty, by several levels. In a few years, when his facial features opened up, who knew what kind of devil he would become? Just smell the potted flowers? Zhou Shang had long ago hacked into Aya's monitoring system through his AI. He'd seen all of Boa's audition and also heard Orlando's fragrant speech. Extravagant. This was erotic wording. Zhou Shang pondered as he walked over. His gait was very elegant, somewhat leisurely and casual, as if the flowers and plants filling the garden weren't worth his attention. He stopped in front of the roses and slightly squinted his eyes. His fair fingers slightly fiddled with the petals. He seemed to be fondling the flowers admiringly, but his eyes were cold and indifferent, showing the others that this was absolutely not the case. When his interest was coming to an end, he turned to leave, but the thorn in the stem pierced his fingertips, a bead of red blood slowly seeping out. He stared at the blood bead, apparently finding it very interesting. His pitch-black eyes finally showed a trace of a smile, but it vanished in an instant, his fingers suddenly closing into a fist, crushing the fiery blooming rose. Flower juice that was much redder than blood flowed along his fingers. The smile in his eyes deepened and thickened. Raising his hand, he brought it to the tip of his nose and sniffed. His intoxicated look revealed a bit of morbid madness. His cheeks were unavoidably stained with a few drops of flower juice. He opened his eyes, sticking out the tip of his tongue and sweeping it. His peach blossom eyes covered with a layer of ambiguous mist. The young man's face still carried a bit of naivety, yet his every gesture exuded a seductive atmosphere. It was a kind of exploding beauty, extravagant beauty. Even from far away, you could still smell a sweet yet rotten aroma. Orlando gulped. The rest of the staff were already long intoxicated, cheeks red, expression in a trance. "Let me see. Lin Shengzi, Huya Company's artist. Okay, we'll use him. Come over 3 days later so we can shoot the advertisement. Remember to take good care of your skin." Orlando made a direct decision, then turned around to comfortingly pet his frenzied heart. Lin Shengzi smiled and nodded, threw the petals in a nearby trash can, then took out a handkerchief and to unhurriedly wipe at the flower juice. He felt a hot gaze rake over his body and frowned. He looked towards the door, but there was no one there. Kawamakun was taking the elevator to the top floor. Aya was the Kao clan's industry. He happened to be visiting the office today. That man looks very familiar. His expression was lazy, tone leisurely, but his crutch was already an erect giant, truly betraying his surging mood. He's Ji Shao's classmate, called Lin Shengzi. We also ate several meals with him, his assistant reminded. Kawamakun recalled him after a moment of pondering. His tone was a little stunned. That kid who was trying to seduce me? Are you sure? He would have never linked that extremely boorish teenager and the extremely alluring fairy he just saw together. Definitely. The assistant carefully considered when he nodded again, looked somewhat hesitant. Kawamakun pondered for a moment, then smiled. If he comes to seduce me again, I'd gladly welcome it. The assistant observed a moment of silence for his boss's integrity. Boss, he is Ji Xiao's boyfriend. What effect will it have on your relationship if Ji Xiao finds out? That kind of person, how can Ji Hanyu hold on to him? Sooner or later, wouldn't he fly away? Besides, I'll just play. They won't need to break up. When I'm bored, I'll give him some money to seal things up. Ji Hanyu won't know. Kawamakun raised an objection, waving his hand. Chapter 4. The door to the conference room opened. Yu Mei-lian impatiently walked over to greet. Wu Tao and Bao also hadn't left and were waiting not far away. How was it? I got it. I have to come shoot the ad in 3 days. Sister Yu helped me negotiate a good price. I urgently need some funds, Julian Sheng said while holding his flower juice-stained handkerchief into his pocket. Don't worry, even if you're a newcomer, Aya has deep pockets. You won't be stiffed, Yu Mei-lian assured. Julian Shang patted her shoulder. Then I'll leave all the details to Sister Yu. I have to go to class later. He walked past Wu Tao, who had a complicated expression and a red-eyed boa. Nodding slightly, he gave them a gorgeous smile. Three days soon passed, during which Yu Mei-lian called and told him that Aya's advertising fee was 500,000. For a newcomer, this was an astronomical price, so she agreed without telling him. To a newcomer, an ad could pay as much as a few 100,000 in income and as little as a few 10,000. Only a real first-class superstar could do an ad that paid tens of millions. Julian Shang knew the market, expressing sincere thanks for Yu Mei-lian's efforts. He woke up very early that morning, opening the door and heading to the dining room while putting on a shirt. The young man's skin was like milk, white and creamy, emitting a slight glow under the orange light. His hair was uncombed, only slightly brushed with his fingers. It was messy but sexy. His hair of peach blossom eyes had a layer of mist, because he'd just woken up. When he walked over with a dazed look, he seemed both pure and cute. His figure was very thin, or maybe not so, because his unfastened shirt was partially open, revealing a slice of a flexible and powerful waist, and a neat arrangement of abdominal muscles. Further up was a delicate and graceful collarbone. He yawned. Two teardrops seeped out of his peach blossom eyes, but they didn't slide down his cheeks. Rather, they clung to his thick eyelashes. He arrived at the dining table and sat down, his cheek propped on his right hand, his left hand holding his spoon, erratically stirring the hot cognac. With steam hung in the air, blurring his facial features, but it made that lazy bearing all the more moving. A loud clattering sound disturbed his leisure. He frowned towards the boy sitting opposite him, seeing Ji Han-yu's flushed face as he jumped up, avoiding the spilled cognac on the table. "Don't move around. I'm coming. How can such a big man drop his bowl? What were you so absent-minded about?" Fang Yudan ran out of the kitchen with the cleaning rag. I was just thinking about my family," Ji Han-yu stammered at the same time. He quickly glanced at Lin Chengze, who was focused on his cognac. Even if he hated Lin Chengze, he also had to admit that the boy's appearance was perfect. He only hadn't seen him for a few days, but his facial features seemed to have opened up a little. His every movement was completely missing his former frivolousness and debauchery. Instead, there was a bit of laziness and elegance, like a Persian cat, resting in the sunlight. Eyes squinted. It made him feel an intolerable itchiness in his heart, wanting to reach out and pet. When Fang Yudan heard this, his heart ached. He quietly picked up the broken pieces of porcelain, wiped up the spilled cognac, then poured him another bowl. His tone was very gentle. "Try not to think about your family affairs. You're a senior. Your studies are more urgent." Ji Han-yu nodded, seeing that Lin Chengze, who was sitting opposite, had offered no comforting words. His momentary speck of infatuation dissipated completely, replaced with contempt and anger. Lin Chengze dropped his gaze, ignoring the ambiguous atmosphere between the two protagonists. While finishing up his cognac, he slowly opened. "Help me ask for a few days' leave. I'm busy." "What are you busy with again? What are you doing? Don't forget that the college entrance exams are in June." Ji Han-yu unprecedentedly questioned. "I said I'm busy, so I'm busy. Don't pester so much." Lin Chengze threw away the spoon and wiped his mouth. Hearing his phone ringing, he picked up, then left the apartment without a goodbye. Ji Han-yu went to the window and looked down. He couldn't help but sneer when he saw him enter an Audi Q7. A slut is always a slut. The more beautiful they look, the cheaper they are. He looked back at Fang Yudan, who was diligently cleaning up the table, and his temporarily warped mentality quickly regained equilibrium. Jun Cheng and Yu Mei-lian arrived at the Aya branch. The staff had already set up the studio lights and cameras in place, waiting for the shooting to begin. "Mr. Orlando, did you forget to give us the script?" Yu Mei-lian dragged over the blonde foreigner who was scurrying around. "Oh, my little fairy has finally arrived. Quickly go get dressed." Orlando automatically ignored Yu Mei-lian, his eyes and heart only filled with the smiling teenager standing under the lights. "Your sister's a little fairy," Jun Cheng cursed in his heart, but his face wore a gorgeous smile. He nodded and followed after the stylist. Yu Mei-lian forcefully tugged at the already intoxicated Orlando and politely asked again, "Mr. Orlando, you forgot the script. If there's no script, how can we shoot?" "Ah, I forgot to tell you. This advertisement has no script. When the little fairy comes back out, we'll directly begin." He raised a hand, smoothing the chaotic hair on his forehead. A tall figure walked through the doorway. When he noticed him, he quickly paced over to greet him. Yu Mei-lian also turned to look. Then her already strained heartstrings quickly shattered. What the fuck? That man turned out to be Kao Mo-kun. The Kao Mo-kun, known for his ruthlessness, the great white shark of the business ocean. Kao Mo-kun. The Kao Mo-kun that could crush a first-class family just by waving his hand. What was he doing here? Yes, this man was an infamous lover of beauty. Man and woman, as long as he fancied them, he would get them by any means. What if he saw Lin Shengzi? Yume Lian turned back, her expression somewhat ugly. Most brokers have more or less done some form of pimping. They weren't willing to commit such acts, but the environment that dictated it. Nowadays, if you wanted to be famous, you need to pay a price most ordinary people couldn't imagine. But Lin Shengzi was still underage and also an orphan. She really couldn't harden her heart. Yu Lian didn't even consider that Kao Mukun would look down on Lin Shengzi. What a joke. Just look at Lin Shengzi's appearance. Anyone who shunned him was blind. Zhu Sheng didn't know that Yu Lian had gotten caught up in an unprecedented dilemma. He was too busy trying to pull up his jeans zipper. Isn't this too tight? I can barely walk. He took a deep breath and sucked in his belly. Not tight, not tight. It's just right. The stylist eyed the young man's abdominal muscles, mermaid line, upturned buttocks, and slender legs. As soon as he finished speaking, he wiped off some drool. Zhou Sheng's mouth twitched, asking, "My top?" "No top. Your upper body will be bare." "Shoes?" Zhou Sheng shook his bare toes. "No shoes either." The stylist struggled to move his gaze away and pushed him out. "Okay, time's almost up. Head out. Orlando has a bad temper. He starts swearing at people if he waits too long." "Oh my god, baby, you're like a piece of freshly baked, fast-melting panna cotta, sprinkled with powdered sugar. I really want to eat you up," Orlando shouted, expression covetous. All the staff looked over with burning gazes, within was a sharp, prickling gaze. Zhu Cheng followed the line of sight, his eyes flashing a little. Next to the director stood a very tall man, at least 190 centimeters. His tailored and expensive suit wrapped his strong physique. His hair was completely combed back, exposing a chiseled, handsome face. His long and narrow eyes were squinted slightly, and his graceful thin lips were slightly raised, his pondering expression revealing wickedness. "Kao Mukun?" Shuyin Cheng dug out the man's identity from the original's memory, then indifferently recovered his line of sight. He looked at Orlando. "Excuse me, how do I shoot the ad? Sister, you said you didn't give her a script." "Ah, there is no script. We will only shoot you. Every angle, every action, every expression of yours. Then we'll pick all the most beautiful and most sexy shots to synthesize an ad so lively and colorful you can smell it. Baby, you just have to play around freely. Go, go!" Orlando pushed the boy into the studio filled with a variety of petals. Zhu Sheng looked at the thick layer of petals under his feet, quite stunned. Modeling really was a pure selling sex appeal occupation. Kao Mo-kun originally thought that the young man would come over to fawn over him with the usual shamelessness. He didn't expect him to just quickly glance at him, then look away as if he didn't know him. Playing cat and mouse? Kao Mo-kun pondered, taking out a cigar from his pocket, cutting it and igniting it. He firmly sucked in a mouthful. Zhu Chang walked a few laps on the petals, then waved to Orlando. "Could I have a bottle of red wine? I want to find some insight through the alcohol." "A beauty, red wine, flowers, perfume. This combination is wonderful." Orlando clapped his hand, his expression enchanted. His assistant quickly brought over a bottle of red wine. Zhu Sheng took a big gulp, felt that it wasn't enough, then took a few more mouthfuls. The bright red liquid dripped down his delicate jaw and slid to his slender neck, then to his sexy collarbone, down to his fair chest. He put down the wine bottle, his cheeks flushed, his peach blossom eyes hazy and glittering. His tipsy state was extremely titillating. There was a sound of gulping in the studio. Orlando took away the bottle and waved. Did you find a feeling for it? If you have, we can start the shooting. Then he turned his back. He gave the bottle up. When he turned his back, he gave the bottle opening an indirect kiss. Kalmokon snorted coldly when he saw this scene, his complexion somewhat ugly. His assistant coughed, reminding, Boss, please take a seat and watch. Now, while everyone is paying attention to Lin Zhengzi. Otherwise, when everyone snaps out of it, you'll be disgraced. He didn't dare say the last sentence, only staring meaningful at his boss's raised crotch. Kalmokun didn't find it embarrassing. He strolled to the director's side and asked for a soft chair to sit down in. His sharp gaze was firmly locked onto the young man's body. Yuan Shang was already feeling a little drunk. He gave the camera a smile, eyes absent-minded, then lay down on the pedals, giving a lazy yawn. The wine tasted pretty good, making him feel drowsy as soon as he got drunk. Apparently, he felt a bit cold. He gathered the petals on his chest and wanted to close his eyes to sleep. Then he remembered that he was currently filming an ad, and reluctantly opened his eyes. He turned his body to face the camera, popping his cheek on his hand, giving a dazed smile. His misty eyes were intoxicating. Great, this smile is great. We have to keep it in. Orlando's excited face was flushed red. Chapter 5. Yuan Sheng turned a deaf ear towards Orlando's loud boasting. He saw a strong, fragrant mist floating in the air and reached out to it. Then he brought in his palm, looked down, and sniffed. He seemed to enjoy the smell, giving another lazy smile. Then he grabbed a handful of petals and squeezed. Opening his mouth, he stuck out the tip of his tongue to lick and suck at the bright red flower juice on his fingers. Whenever he was drunk, he always felt thirsty. The gorgeous elfin teenager was intoxicated in the fragrant mist, lying on the ground. His body was covered in bright red flower juice and scattered petals. This scene was gorgeous, yet revealing a sweetly decadent scent, captivatingly addicting, captivatingly enchanting, captivatingly corrupt. The cameraman was sweating profusely. His face blushed, barely able to withstand the young boy's visual impact. But he had to brace himself and continue to film. The director had forgotten to yell cut, and the staff had forgotten their destinations. All of them were staring, stupefied at the young man. Only Orlando was still muttering to himself. This shot can't be cut. This one too. That shot of him licking the flower juice will have to be reshot later with a close-up. We still need to shoot a close-up of his face and a close-up of his eyes. His feet must also have a close-up. His round pink toes are too cute. Orlando, shut up. Kalmokun snuffed out his cigar and shouted. At the end of his patience, his voice sounded very uneven and hoarse. Orlando immediately mimed the zipper pulling action against his lip. Yuan Sheng rolled back and forth on the petals for several laps. His head was almost spinning when he heard the director yell cut. Take a break. We'll shoot a few close-ups later. He sighed in relief, brushing his hair away as he walked towards the red-eyed Yu Mei Lian. Lin Shengzi, a deep, hoarse voice came from behind. Uncle Kao. Yuan Sheng respectfully nodded towards the man approaching him. Kao-Mukun obviously didn't expect him to suddenly address him like this. His smile froze for a moment, but he didn't say anything about it, just using his fingertips to rub away the flower juice staining the young man's lips, then strolling away. His assistant looked at Yu Mei Lian and urged, After the filming, there is a dinner party. Please make sure to attend. We're leaving first. See you later. Yu Mei Lian nodded, her face pale. They were now standing in the other's domain and also working for him. Even if they didn't want to go to this dinner party, they still had to. Little Ze, be careful later. Don't drink too much. I know, Sister Yu. I have some common sense. Jun Cheng didn't mind. He had long known that he would encounter such a thing if he involved himself in the entertainment industry. But he had enough self-defense ability, so he wasn't worried at all. If you really can't resist, you can also try to get some benefits out of it. You've heard of Kaomakun, right? The ruthless great white shark. But if you follow him, the benefits are obvious. He can guarantee you fame in the shortest time. Zhang Yi was only with him for less than a month, and now he's super influential. Sister Yu's not inciting you to jump into the fire pit, but the situation is beyond our control. Follow him, and you'll only have to suffer for a few months. Don't, and you'll have to suffer for a lifetime. Yu Meilian's expression was tangled. Zhu Yinsheng nodded repeatedly. He heard her concerns, but they didn't enter his heart. After a few close-up shots, the passionate filming finally ended. The cameraman quickly took a napkin to wipe his sweat, his eyes dodging the young man's body. He dared to guarantee that as long as the commercial was allowed to broadcast, everyone would become intoxicated in this charming feast. None of the shots were focused on the perfume, but you could still smell an irresistible fragrance. He had to admit that Orlando's taste really transcended human limits. Zhu Yunsheng took a shower, put on his original white shirt and down jacket, then walked with Yu Mei Lian to the elevator. When they barely walked up the doorway, they saw Kao Mukun's expressionless assistant already waiting there. The assistant led the two to the top-level club. Kao Mukun and several exuberant-mannered men were sitting around a table, accompanied by several currently popular stars. "Baby, you're here." Kao Mukun stretched out his arm to pull the young man to the seat at his side. Zhu Yunsheng instantly glared at him with his peach blossom eyes as if to ask, "When did I become your baby?" Kao Mukun really loved the feeling of talking with their eyes. Using his fingertip to flick his curled eyelashes, he pointed to the men and introduced one by one. Some of these people were high-level Aya directors, some were Kao Group's partners, and there were a few of the top domestic movie production companies' CEOs. Yu Mei Lian was in reverence as she pulled Zhu Yunsheng to greet the crowd. She'd gotten over her previous tangled feelings. Holy shit, no wonder Zhang Yijia shot through stardom like a rocket. He was under the care of these extremely wealthy businessmen. The people here were all business giants, the kind that you ordinarily had no way to climb a relationship with. Zhu Yunsheng knew that his life was not yet on the right track. He couldn't make Kao Mukun an enemy, so he had no choice but to silently endure, greeting the crowd, then drinking a cup to show respect. Kao Mukun was very satisfied with his obedience, pulling him into his arms and kissing his forehead. Then he ladled a bowl of health maintenance soup and put it in front of him, gently saying, "You're too thin. You need to properly make up for it. Eat first. Just take whatever you like. Don't be reserved. I have some business to talk about. Don't worry about me." The pasling Shengze, naturally very attentive at the dining table, with only one glance he would helpfully drop Kao Mukun's favorite dishes into his bowl, so Kao Mukun deliberately added the last sentence. But the current Zhu Yunsheng didn't care if he starved to death in front of him. He quietly and earnestly ate, thinking to himself, "Eat until satisfied, then think of ways to deal with the self-important great white shark." Although it was called a dinner party, during it, Kao Mukun didn't even touch a grain of rice. He just talked about business, then directly asked the men to leave, even making them hand over their business card to set aside for Yu Yu Meilian. His intentions to nurture Lin Shengze to popularity was abundantly clear. Contacts were a broker's largest capital. With these contacts, Wu Tao was outclassed. He wouldn't even be worthy to carry her shoes. Yu Meilian's face reddened in excitement. She carefully collected the business cards, saw the big boss impatiently wave her away, and quickly and tactfully left, very impressively selling her teammate. Is the food good? I can have them prepare some more. Kawamukun had his arms around the boy's shoulder, his tone intimate. No, I'm full. Julian Shang put down his chopsticks and was preparing to wipe his mouth when Kawamukun stretched out a napkin to carefully wipe it for him. Okay, if you're done, we can go. Kawamukun matter-of-courtely pulled the youth's hand to leave. Uncle Kao, what are your intentions? Zhou Yunsheng sat still, refusing to get up. He tried to break the other's clamp, but actually found himself helpless. That's impossible. After he transformed his body, whether it was strength or speed, he was far beyond a regular person. He should be one of the strongest people in the world. How could this happen? Because of this unexpected discovery, Zhou Yunsheng finally felt some rising panic. Kawamukun hooked his lips, laughing. I didn't think you'd have such strength in that little body. He wanted to embrace the young man more and more. He sat back down and smiled. Aren't I following your intentions? You wanted to seduce me, so I'm letting you seduce me. You want to be rich and famous, so I'll make you rich and famous. What are you dissatisfied with? I tried to seduce you because I needed money, but now I have the ad. I'm already well off. Since he couldn't resist with force, Zhu Yunsheng had no choice but to show some weakness. He blinked his pair of watery peach blossom eyes, looking over pitiable. Kawamukun's eyes darkened. He bluntly hugged him onto his lap, biting his ear as he muttered, I know you got close to me for money. It was obviously not because you loved me, but you have to think clearly. 500,000 could buy you a few sets of clothes and bags at the most. Then where do you get more money? Might as well be with me. I'll get you whatever you want. After speaking, he bit down on the young man's earlobe, no longer able to resist, nibbling with his teeth. Then he inched the tip of his tongue out to explore inside his ear. Jin Sheng's body went soft from the tease. He gulped down big breaths of fresh air, trying to restore his sanity, but the strong masculine atmosphere was making him more and more addicted. These arms were too familiar. Even if his soul couldn't tell, his body was instinctively welcoming him. However, under his panic, Zhou Yunsheng unexpectedly overlooked the familiarity. Kawamukun originally wanted to just tease him a bit, but when he started, he unexpectedly couldn't stop. The young man's skin was too white, too smooth, too soft, the texture like congealed milk. I really wanted to suck on his whole body to see if sweet milk would come out. Baby, look at yourself, you're all red. He unzipped the young man's jacket, then slipped his big palm in to explore, laughing lightly. Okay, no more playing cat and mouse. Just frankly tell me how much you want. I don't want money. I won't be with you. I have a boyfriend. Zhu Yunxing refused, panting. Boyfriend? Jihan Yu? Don't joke around, baby. Aren't you also with him for his money? Now that his family is bankrupt, he can't give you anything. Don't tell me that you love him more than money. Kawamukun chuckled to him, believing that love was the world's most ridiculous act. I love money. In this world, who can honestly say they don't love money? I approached you at the beginning because I desperately needed money. If I could, I would never betray Han Yu. You're right. My love for him really does exceed my love for money. Zhu Yunsheng was gripped underneath, almost crying, teardrops hanging on his eyelashes. Refusing to fall, he looked extremely lovely. Kamakun kissed away his crystal tears, pressing his buttocks down against his giant, panting out. Right, you love him. I also don't want you to leave him. Stay with me for 3 months. Then I'll set you free and give you lots of money. I promise not to let Jihan Yu find out. Are you satisfied? No, the problem is that I don't want your money anymore. Uncle Kao, please let me go. Molesting minors is a felony. I'll report you. Jun Shang struggled fiercely. Kao-kun was almost unable to hold on to him and had no choice but to let go. Although he had plenty of methods to evade punishment from the law, forcing others to bed was really boring. He found it very disdainful. Leave. I'll give you a few days to consider. He combed his messy hair with his fingers, then finally fished out a cigar, cut and lit it. His deep eyes were full of mockery. When you hang someone's appetite, you also have to know the limit. When you come to me again, I'll certainly cost you more than today. It'll certainly cost you more than today. In the end, he still wasn't convinced of the boy's so-called true love speech. Hang your sister's appetite. Jun Shang fiercely glared at him, then picked up his down jacket and quickly left. You look even more beautiful when you're angry. Kamakun spit out a mouthful of smoke. The stiffness between his legs violently twitched a bit, stimulated by the young man's gorgeous, angry eyes. Chapter 6. Due to Zhu Yincheng's excellent state, the ad only took a day to complete filming. Orlando was personally responsible for editing. When he walked out of the studio, his face was very flushed, his eyes in a trance, like he had just drank a bottle of strong wine. Boss, this is a sample. Take a look first. I have a feeling that this perfume will be really popular in Sea Country. No, in the world. I don't plan to refilm for the European commercials. I'll just use this. You can go about your business. I'll watch it later. Kaomu-kun was thumbing through a document, not even lifting his head. Orlando had originally wanted to appreciate his amazed expression. Seeing him completely indifferent, he had no choice but to leave in disappointment. After the man left, Kaomu-kun immediately got up and looked at the office door, locked the office door, took off his coat and loosened his tie. He poured himself a glass of red wine and inserted a disc into the computer. A female singer's ambiguous tone slowly flowed out. Close your eyes. Have no fear. The monster's gone. He's on the run, and your mummy's here. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Beautiful boy. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Beautiful boy. Before you go to sleep, say a little prayer. Every day, in every way, it's getting better and better. Beautiful, 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 beautiful boy. Beautiful, 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 beautiful boy. John Lennon's Beautiful Boy. The story mentions a female voice, so a cover is probably playing. Kaomu-kun's nonchalant expression gradually became more focused and passionate. When he was in the studio, he was sitting to the side, so his view was limited. But this commercial was taken from an overhead view. The visual effect the switched perspective brought out was shocking. The young man's eyes were misty, cheeks flushed red, because he was drunk. His lips were somewhat dry. He frowned in discomfort, then stuck out the tip of his tongue to lick at it, and the dryness turned tender and plump. But this completely couldn't solve his thirst, so he grabbed a few petals and squeezed, sucking on the bright red flower juice. When he ate his fill, he gave a satisfied sigh and suddenly spit out a sweet and fragrant. Then he randomly wiped the flower juice on his fair chest. He was the most beautiful existence to the eyes. Even the colorful petals paled in comparison to his brilliance. In the series of beautiful, 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 beautiful boy, the words brimming with deep love, he slowly closed his eyes. a teardrop hanging on his curled, thick eyelashes, falling asleep serene. The scene gradually blurred, the glittering golden Gothic font surfaced on the screen. Extravagant, the taste of magic. The whole commercial didn't have a single shot related to the perfume, but it could make people smell the aroma of rot, the smell of flower bloomed to the end of its life. It was a fascinating ad. Kalmo-kun had put his glass of wine to the side earlier, staring fixatedly at the screen. 60 seconds was the longest allowed advertising time, but he felt it was too short. In only a blink of an eye, the young boy, full of devilish charm, disappeared. He hurriedly pressed the replay button, imagining the young man's small, dark red mouth being sucked by him, imagining the young man's body being caressed by him, imagining the young man crying for mercy under his body, his eyelashes stained in crystal tears. Like magic, he outlined scenes of the two's joyous love in his mind. Even without real touch, he unexpectedly reached the ultimate enjoyment of these scenes. Shit. When he returned to reality, he stared at his moist crotch, his face extremely gloomy. He quickly walked into the lounge to take a cold shower. As he draped on his bathrobe, he called Yumelian. Shuyun Cheng had been waiting for Aya to send money to his account. He'd never been a short on money type. In this current situation, where he had to calculate with which dish balanced cheapness and quality whenever he ate, he was really at a loss. He waited for nearly 7 or 8 days. During this period, he had to borrow money from Fang Yudan. If Jihan Yu gave him one more mocking look, he wouldn't survive it. He called Yu Meilian to inquire. I don't know. Call Mr. Kao about it. Yu Meilian gently pushed the matter away. Zhou Yunqing was helpless. He had no choice but to call Mr. Kamo-kun's number. Kamo-kun picked up the phone very quickly. There was a ring on this end, then a man's deep, sexy voice came out at the end. Baby, have you thought about it? Zhou Yunqing frowned, getting straight to the point. My payment, when will I get it? Baby, didn't you read the contract? The contract stipulates that the payment can only be transferred after the ad airs. Then, when is it airing? Currently, the sample is still on trial, but I hear that it violates the standards for broadcasting a bit, so it might get banned. What? Do you mean that if it gets banned, I won't get paid? What kind of unequal clause is that? Zhou Yuncheng's teeth itched in anger. If he had just played around freely and hadn't mixed in the entertainment industry, he wouldn't be in this situation. If he knew this would happen, he would have just sold some small software instead. Who cared if it was out of character or not? This is stipulated in the contract. Hearing the boy's suppressed angry breath, Kamo-kun felt his whole body heat up. He pulled at his tie and undid the first 2 buttons on his jacket, licking his lips and comfortingly saying, But don't be anxious, baby. We plan to release the commercial in the European and American markets. When it passes the reviews, we'll pay you. Then how long will it take to release in the European and US market? Zhou Yuncheng patiently questioned. This was, after all, his hard-earned money. How could he just let it go? I don't know yet. Wait and see. Baby, your bank account should be almost empty, right? I hear that every day in the school cafeteria you only eat egg drop soup and veggies. Baby, you have to take better care of yourself. When you come to Uncle will treat you to a big dinner. After dinner, you can have a pleasantly sweet lollipop. The man's deliberately lowered voice was extremely ambiguous. It made Zhou Yuncheng's ear turn red. Go fucking eat shit. He hung up the phone and ground his itchy teeth. What a big temper. Kaomo-kun stared at his phone's screensaver. It was a picture of the misty-eyed drunken teenager, smiling ambitiously. When the teenager returned to his seat, his cheeks were flushed deep red, his eyes were bright, and his lips were still faintly pouting in unhappiness. It was very cute. Ji-han-yu couldn't help but repeatedly glance at him, while fighting the urge to speak to him. Because of his pretend bankruptcy, the past Lin Chengze's attitude towards Ji-han-yu had changed. Although he never treated him badly, he had obviously lost interest in him very much. If it was someone else in this body who knew how the plot would unfold, they would certainly try all they could to appease Ji-han-yu, so they could reverse the situation. But Zhou Yunsheng wasn't the type of person. He never liked to win by pampering the others, only focusing on face slapping. The two returned home with their own concerns filling their hearts. Fang Yudan had already finished dinner. Only God knew that the guy with 4 daily jobs still found time to cook all the meals. Only God knew how that guy with 4 daily jobs still found time to cook all the meals. Eat up while it's hot. The dishes are a little scarce today. Please put up with it. Wait a few days for my paycheck to come in. I'll buy a whole chicken and come back to improve our meals. He smiled as he scooped the two-some rice. His strong, optimistic attitude endlessly touched Ji-han-yu. He was anxious to tell him he didn't need to work anymore, that he could support him. But his goal of playing with Lin Chengze had not yet been reached. He had to hold back. The three people quietly ate their rice. Fang Yunan took out a bank book from his pocket and handed it over. Han-yu, this is the money I saved from work. You have to hold it for an emergency. Didn't you say that someone else could take away the factory if you didn't quickly invest? Ji-han-yu froze for a second before reaching for the bank book. He looked at the lowly number, an amount he formerly wouldn't glance twice at. His eyes quietly reddening. Someone who would stick with him through thick and thin, stand by him when he was destitute and helpless. That was the type of relationship he always yearned for, and now he finally got it. Zhou Sheng glanced at the bank book faintly opening. What use could 20,000 be? You should take it back. Of the two, one did his best to come to his help, and the other watched on with cold eyes, like a bystander. Their diametrically opposed attitudes made Ji-han-yu's loathing for Lin Chengze grow deeper, while his love for Fang Yudan intensified. But he wouldn't display his loathing for Lin Chengze in front of Fang Yudan. Instead, he echoed, Yes, Yudan. This little amount wouldn't be useful. Take it back. I'll think of another way. Fang Yudan firmly refused. The two pushed the bank book back and forth until Ji-han-yu provocatively caressed his palm. Then he compromised, blushing. He immediately lowered his head, not daring to look at his best friend. Zhou Sheng was still thinking that it wasn't any of his business, and was about to head back to his room when he heard Fang Yudan open, stammering, Little Ze, why don't you put the house up for mortgage? This could certainly help Han-yu. Care to repeat that? Zhu Yunsheng almost wanted to dig out his own ears. This house was Lin Chengze's. Fang Yuran was just his roommate. What qualifications did he have to say these words? Holy Mother of God. Every fucking saint is someone else's mother. Fan Yuran couldn't lift his head under his hostile glare. Ji-han-yu immediately blocked his beloved person from his line of sight, echoing, Yes, little sir, you can mortgage the house to the bank to help me get a loan. I'll pay you back as soon as my factory goes into production. He clearly knew that Lin Chengze would never agree. He insisted just to make things difficult for him. Antagonizing Lin Chengze had become the source of joy in his life. Sorry, this house can't be mortgaged. Zhou Shang looked back and forth between the two people, enunciating each word. You both should know that this is the only relic my parents left me. So, I will never risk it. If you're short on money, I will think of a way. So don't worry any more. I'm tired. I'm going to sleep. He nodded towards the two men, then slammed the door. Jian Yu thought his think of a way was just a bluff. He gave a mocking smile after he turned his back. In the final analysis, Lin Shengze and Jihan Yu's dispute was like a dispute between a sugar daddy and their sugar baby. One wanted payment, one wanted sex. Every exchange was mutually beneficial. What right did Jihan Yu have to take revenge against Lin Shengze? What right did he have to destroy Lin Shengze's life? Since he didn't have enough sense to stop before going too far, Jun Sheng would let him profoundly understand what truly selfless love looked like. Perhaps at that time he won't be able to endure it. After pondering, his lips curved as he picked up his phone. Baby, have you come around? Kamo-kun answered the phone within a second. Yes, I've come around. You want... Before he could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by the man's deep voice. Come over, baby. Let's talk in person. How could we possibly discuss this kind of thing clearly over the phone? Okay, where do you want to meet? Jun Sheng's tone was decadent, but his expression was a bit wicked, winding and unwinding a lock of hair on his forehead. In my private club. I'll send a driver to pick you up. Good. Jun Sheng was about to hang up when the other end made a tough request. Baby, don't I get a goodbye kiss? Kiss your sister. Jun Sheng's temple twitched, but he still printed a kiss on the microphone. A man's muffled, happy laughter sounded in his ear. When he finally hung up, Jun Sheng casually picked out a white shirt and crew-neck sweater, covered with a down jacket, grabbed his phone and key, and headed out. No one was in the living room. Fang Yudan was in his bedroom, and Jihan Yu had followed him in. Only God knew what they were doing inside. Chapter 7. When Zhou Yunsheng arrived, Kamo-kun was sitting on the sofa, drinking red wine. The room was only lit by a dim table lamp. The light and shadows made his handsome facial features seem more profound. Come and have a drink. He waved the youth over with his deep voice. His voice deep. Red Burgundy wine, 1997. Zhou Sheng's nose twitched as he walked over. He raised the glass and sipped. He had a very elegant drinking posture, like a real aristocrat, making Kamo-kun feel quite surprised. I only want you to stay with me for 3 months. Name your price. He gave a satirical smile as he drained the remaining wine in one breath. There was nothing in this world money couldn't buy. Just like good wine, just like a beauty. Jun Sheng almost wanted to pour the wine out on his head, but he held back. He looked down for a moment, pretending to think, then said in a low voice, I want 300,000. You sure? Kamo-kun couldn't help but question. He had already prepared himself to hear an astronomical price from the boy, and the result was the boy only wanted 300,000. Couldn't even buy a decent watch. That couldn't even buy a decent watch. It can't be less. I have to get 300,000. Jun Sheng misunderstood his thoughts and once again stressed. Kamo-kun looked at him deeply, then propped his forehead on his hand and laughed. Well, 300,000 it is, but I first have to inspect. Inspect what? Jun Sheng was still ignorant when he found himself being carried on top of the man's shoulder and thrown onto a big bed in the neighboring room. He fell dizzily, then was pushed down by a strong body, and his lips were occupied by another's, sucking. A familiar feeling of vertigo instantly made him lose his mind. After a few minutes, the man finally opened the distance between them, but still erratically licked the young man's red and wet lips. He laughed lightly. "Baby, you're so much sweeter than I'd imagined." "Are you finished inspecting?" Jin Sheng panted as he asked. "How's that possible? It's an inspection, of course. I have to thoroughly examine inside and out." The man's big hands suggestively kneaded the younger man's butt. "Wait, look into my eyes first." Jin Sheng quickly cupped the man's cheeks, forcing him to look into his bottomless pupils. His voice lowered. His tone seemed particularly soothing. "Tell me, what do you see?" Kamakun involuntarily stared into his pupils. His expression gradually turned absent-minded. "Tell me, what do you see?" Jin Sheng waited for him to speak for a long time, then asked again. "I see a star ocean." Even Kamakun's voice became absent-minded. "Very good. Now step away and masturbate." Jin Sheng gave a satisfied smile. Like a queen, he pushed aside the taller and stronger man who was pushing him down. This was a skill he'd learned through a reincarnation, hypnosis. In that reincarnation, he was a psychologist. He relied on this marvelous hypnosis skill to trick the heroine. The result was not only was he deceived by the heroine, he was killed 10,000 times by the hero. He couldn't bear to recall the past. But in short, this was an essential cheat skill for murder, arson, and swindling. He relied on it to complete many impossible tasks. But Kamakun's absent-mindedness only lasted for a short moment. When the young man broke out of his embrace and was about to get out of bed, he instantly sobered up, then gave a sneer. "Baby, what did you just say? Say it again." Jin Sheng, who was half into his sweater, was completely stupefied. After he could react, he said tentatively, I said you should masturbate. Masturbating is enough. You'd certainly be happier than being with me. Try it out. You'll understand." Kamakun was both angry and amused. He dragged the younger man back onto the bed, easily stripped off his sweater and shirt and covered him. His voice was hoarse. "Baby, how can masturbating make me happier than fucking you? I don't need you to try it to know." After saying this, he used his hard giant to push against the boy's soft belly. Jin Sheng wanted to squirm out of his embrace, but he pulled him back by his ankle. His pants were stripped off in one move, and he was pressed into the soft bedding, stark naked. An hour later, the two had satiated expressions. One was wrapped in a quilt, panting. The other was leaning against the headboard, smoking. Jun Sheng surreptitiously sized up the man. The felt hypnotism was still brooding on his heart. The prerequisite to escape another's hypnosis was spiritual strength of equal or higher amount. Jun Sheng was the only person to complete thousands of tasks under the Lord God. His soul power still had not yet reached the upper limit. It was obvious that his spiritual power and potential were terrifying. And this world was merely an E-class world. There was no supernatural powers, cultivation, magic, and other fantasy elements. In other words, a person with higher spiritual power than Zhou Yunsheng should not exist in this world. Yet, here was Kao Mukun. What were his origins? Was the missing energy from the Xinghai space more than half, in fact, related to him? Jin Sheng frowned, then picked up a pillow to cover his head, blocking a giggle that was about to flow out. He'd guessed that he'd found out the cause. Similarities between people were inevitable, but resemblance after resemblance, time after time, was absolutely not a coincidence. Moreover, his body had long ago recognized the other man, even before his reason had. But because of fear of disappointment, he had refused to think too deeply about it. At first, he started a relationship with this man merely to divert himself from loneliness. But after being followed through 3 lifetimes, he naturally had higher expectation for the situation. Restraining his joy, he shifted the pillow slightly to stare at the man through the gap. Kaomakun was actually constantly paying attention to his reactions. Seeing him covering his face with a pillow, he thought that the cigarette smell was bothering him and quickly extinguished it. When he saw him secretly observing him, he couldn't help but smile, an indulgent smile, then immediately put on a cold face. He suddenly thought about it. The younger man was only a plaything he'd bought for 300,000, one that could sell anything for money, depraved, frivolous, and money-hungry, a plaything with no willpower. Why should he care about his feelings? He scolded himself, but he also couldn't help but be deeply attracted to the boy, his mood fluctuating and tangling. In order to struggle free from his nearly disoriented heart, he pretended to indifferently say, "Your performance in bed was pretty good. I'm very satisfied. Now that the deal has sealed, we need to establish a few rules." Jun Cheng's joyful mood was distinguished by his words. Throwing open the pillow, he asked in disbelief, "You want to set rules for me?" "The people who follow me all have to observe the rules." Kaomakun's tone was strict, but his heart was trembling. He suddenly felt very guilty about what he was doing. "The people who follow you? And how many people have you had so far?" Shunsheng questioned. Kaomakun felt even guiltier, retorting, "Why do you care about that? What's your relationship with me?" "I'm your lover." This sentence was almost blurted out, but Sheng held back. He'd sensed that Kaomakun's situation was completely different from his own. Every time he reincarnated, his data was formatted. In other words, he didn't have any memories from previous lives. But that was fine, as long as he still followed him from world to world. Thinking of this, Zhuyin Sheng's anger dissipated, dully asking, "Fine, let's talk about your rules." Kaomakun caressed the red marks on the younger man's neck, saying in a heavy voice, "The first rule, within the 3 months, you can't let Hanyu touch you. The second rule, come when I call, you can't avoid me without a reason." Zhuyin Sheng was ready to obediently listen. After not hearing him continue for a long time, he asked, "That's it? Did you think I'd give you house rules to memorize?" Kaomakun smirked. Jin Sheng nodded, then picked up his clothing thrown at the foot of the bed and pulled them on. Kaomakun frowned and asked, "What are you doing?" "I have to go home. If I don't, Hanyu will call to ask. I also have a rule. I hope you can comply. You can't let Hanyu know about the transaction between us." When he bent over to pull up his pants, Jun Sheng narrowed his eyes and sneered. "Just because you formatted, you thought you could settle accounts eventually? I'll make you suffer in the future." Sure enough, Kaomakun felt very uncomfortable, itching to drag him back and mercilessly fuck him again. But he held back, irritably combing his hand through his hair as he ridiculed. "Isn't this unnecessary? Since his family is already bankrupt, why don't you break up with Hanyu? What can you gain by wasting your time with him?" "Because I love him, I'll never break up with him," Shuyun Sheng said while picking up his jacket and putting it on. "You love him? You show your love for him by climbing into my bed?" Karmakun's eyes were instantly bloodshot, his voice revealing a trace of furious malice. "Yes, because I love him, I'll sleep with you." Yun Cheng wore his shoes and walked towards the door. Then, as if remembering something, he turned back and asked, "Do you remember Jun Cheng?" Kamukun was still angry at his inexplicable answer. He stared blankly when he heard this name, but after thinking for a moment, he shook his head. "How about Wei Xian, Shen Yibin, Lu Shulang, Ning Xinyan, Zhu Zhaoting," the name of the crown prince? After asking several questions in a row, Kao Mukun's reaction was just shaking his head, baffled. Zhensheng had no choice but to press down his disappointment and hurriedly leave. After he left, Kao Mukun was still chewing on the name Zhensheng, his expression somewhat startled. Then he immediately felt a huge headache. He lit a cigar and forcefully inhaled a mouthful. From that day on, Kawa-kun picked up the younger man and brought him to his club for relief every week. The feeling of being with the younger man was too beautiful. There were many times when he was reluctant to withdraw from his body, just wanting to tear him apart and devour him. Gradually, meeting once a week was no longer able to satisfy him, so it changed to every 3 days, then again to 2 days, then every day, until finally he was itching to tie the boy to his side at all times. Today he was trying to invite the boy out for dinner, but dozen calls successively failed to connect. He restlessly waited for half an hour, but when he was about to send his assistant to locate him, the boy took the initiative to call him back. "What are you doing? Why didn't you answer the phone for so long?" Kamukun asked, exasperated. "The holiday is almost there. We have finals. I just finished an exam. My phone was on silent, so I didn't hear." The boy's clear voice instantly quenched Kamukun's anxiousness and anger. He pulled at his tie, slowly asking, "How was the test?" "It was good." Jun Cheng casually packed his backpack, his exquisite and immaculate profile reflecting the warm sun, making his beauty seem unreal. Not only was Ji Hanyu attracted, even Ji Hanyu's best friend Wang Yi was staring in awe, his heart unbearably itchy. On the other end, Kamukun said, "I'm adding a new rule. From now on, your phone has to be reachable at all times, and if there's a special circumstance that causes you to disconnect it, you must inform me first." "Why don't you just install a tracking device on me?" Jun Sheng rolled his eyes, saying in his heart, was this strong desire to control chronic illness impossible to change? There was also smoking. After several lifetimes of supervising, he still couldn't make the man quit. In the last life, the man was directly addicted to drugs. Could it be there were inherent traits locked into his database? Even after formatting, he couldn't be modified? Thinking of this, he gently laughed. Kamukun heard his laughter, and his heart almost melted into a puddle of water, saying softly, "That's a good idea. I'll buy you a tracking watch tomorrow, so I don't have to be afraid of losing you. I'll take you out to play during the holiday. Where do you want to go? Ask me after my grades come out." Jun Chang picked up his bag, beckoning to Ji Hanyu as he walked out of the classroom first. "Okay, I'll come pick you up. Let's have dinner." Kamukun immediately picked up his car keys and headed down. Jin Cheng promised and hung up the phone, then sent Ji Hanyu, who was following him behind, away. Ji Hanyu's best friend, Wang Ji, frequently looked back at the teenager standing under the sunset, teasing, Aren't you together with his best friend? Why not let him to us to play? Why not lend him to us to play? If you guys want to play, just go ahead. As long as you have enough money, he'll do anything for you." Ji Han-yu laughed disdainfully. "He's been ignoring us lately, very cold. Can't you help us invite him out?" "I can. If he takes the bait, don't forget to leave some evidence behind. Otherwise, if I suddenly dump him, you then will think I'm merciless and fickle. Because of him, Yudan has been feeling guilty recently, and has trouble eating and sleeping. My heart hurts when I see how much weight he lost. In short, the fault is not on me or Yudan. It's Lin Chengze who's willingly degrading himself. You understand? Understood. You're a really bad guy. Jian Yi has hastily nodded. Chapter 8. The meeting location with the teenager had long changed from the club to his home. Kamakun lit a cigarette, staring at the silently dressing teenager. He wanted to urge the other side to stay, but he also felt that the plaything he bought wasn't worth any more of his investment. His frequently tangled mood made his face very gloomy and unsightly. Xian Sheng, as always, left right away, but Kamakun irritably extinguished his cigarette, then called his nephew. His uncle was now Jihan-Yu's biggest support. Without his uncle's help, his factories simply couldn't have been built up, so Jihan-Yu's handling of his uncle's attitude was very cautious. Even if it was 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, he would still crawl up from half awake to accompany the man to eat a midnight snack. They found a relatively clean barbecue shop, ordered some barbecue and a dozen beers. You still live with that classmate of yours? Kamo-kun didn't drink or eat. He just smoked one cigarette after another. Yes. Jihan-Yu picked up the roasted skewers and ate heartily. What's your relationship with that classmate? Lovers? Kamo-kun looked over with sharp eyes. Lovers? Is he worthy? Jihan-Yu sneered. He's just pursuing my money. Before, he used to desperately pester me, saying how much he loved me. But as soon as I went bankrupt, he immediately snapped me and even fooled around with my friends. What? He slept with your friends? Kamo-kun's face had a smile, but his eyes concealed ruthlessness. He unexpectedly hasn't. Jihan-Yu shook his head. Then why did you say he fools around? He loves to play around with them. All the things he did to please me before, he now does for them. Kamo-kun opened a bottle of beer, drank down a gulp, then continued to ask, Have you slept with him? No, Jihan-Yu blushed, immediately denying. Although I live in his house, we haven't done anything. I'm sleeping on the sofa. Kamo-kun's cold eyes retreated slightly. He was preparing to continue the disguised interrogation when his nephew spilled the beans. Uncle, I'm in love with his friend, Fang Yuran. Fang Yuran is an orphan, also his roommate. He's really a saint. In order to get his uncle's approval, he cited a lot of examples. Fang Yuran, although he doesn't look as perfect as Lin Shengze, his personality is very strong and optimistic. He's good at cooking too. Lin Shengze doesn't do anything at home. Yudan takes care of everything. Cooking, laundry, cleaning, everything that needs doing. He also works 4 part-time jobs a day, but his grades never drop. If I had his origins, I wouldn't be half as good as he is. Uncle, you know, I lied to him and said I needed 300,000 in venture capital in order to revive my family, and he gave me all his savings. Think about it. Uncle, he's a high school student. Even if he works 4 jobs a day, how much money could he save? What an idiot. Lin Shengze is not as stupid as he is. He either pretends not to hear or half-heartedly says he'll help me think of a way. But in reality, he forgets about the matter as soon as he turns around. Tell me, one is so lovely, the other is so hypocritical. How did they even become friends? This makes me want to break up with Lin Shengze, but I need a good reason. Jihan-Yu irritably shoved a hand through his hair. Kamo-kun stared blankly for a moment, then questioned. You told Lin Shengze you needed 300,000 to start a business? When? The beginning of last month, I think. I actually don't need any money, Uncle. Don't worry. Jihan-yu smiled and waved away his concerns. Kamo-kun glanced at him with gloomy eyes, then put down his bottle and directly left. He drove home in record time, stood in front of the French window and smoked a cigarette, then finally called the young man's phone. "What?" Yunsheng grumbled. "Sleeping?" Kamo-kun's tone unconsciously softened. "What do you think? What time is it? I still have an exam tomorrow. If I don't do well, I'm blaming you." "Okay, blame me." A smile leaked out of Kamo-kun's eyes, but quickly vanished. He originally wanted to interrogate him, to find out if he'd followed him to help Jihan-yu, but he suddenly remembered what he said that day. "Because I love him, I'll sleep with you." The answer was very obvious now. He didn't need to ask. He'd thought that the boy was just a plaything he'd bought, a depraved thing with no willpower. But he didn't expect him to not truly have no willpower. Rather, he dedicated his whole heart to that person. For that person, he'd do anything, even sell himself. This understanding didn't let Kamo-kun feel better. Instead, it made him wander on the brink of flying into a rage. But he knew that this wasn't the boy's fault. He shouldn't criticize him, even a little bit. So he held back, softly murmuring a few appeasing words. He set up another appointment for tomorrow, hung up the phone, then sneered. "Baby, how can you love such a thing?" He'd completely forgotten that the so-called thing was his nephew. He slowly cut a cigar as he planned out how to make the boy see Jihan-yu's true colors. The world had so many good men. Rather than love Jihan-yu, why not switch to someone better? He also really wanted to receive such sincere, unreserved love. After the test, Zhu was taken to Kamo-kun's home. "Change into this." The man took out a set of brand new stay-at-home clothes. Baffled, Zhu looked at him, but didn't move. This is your wardrobe from now on. I bought you a few sets of clothes. Why don't you take a look to see if you like them?" The wardrobe was opened. Many clothes were neatly hung inside. They were obviously all brand new. Even the tags weren't cut off. Zhu was indifferent to fashion. He only liked electronics, but Lin Xingzi loved clothes, so he was inevitably affected by this. He unconsciously walked over and started opening up packages to browse. Kamo-kun saw him, no longer resisting, and gave a satisfied smile. While massaging his neck with his palms, he muttered, "You should live with me from now on. It's not safe always rushing home in the middle of the night." "No, Han-yu will suspect." Jun-sheng immediately put down the clothes and turned to leave. Kamo-kun didn't get angry because of his actions. He quickly pulled him into his arms and kissed him pacifyingly. "Baby, don't go. I was just making a suggestion. Of course I'll keep these things for you. Believe me, you will use them sooner or later." Jun-sheng thoughtfully looked at him, then gave up his struggling. Tonight, Kamo-kun was especially gentle after dinner. He accompanied him to write a test paper, asked about his college entrance examinations, filling in his aspirations report, etc. He even gave him a lot of pertinent recommendations. But in bed, he was especially ruthless. While he was vigorously conquering his body, he panted out questions. "Baby, if I didn't appear, were you going to sell yourself to anybody? Anybody who could give you 300,000? Is that right?" He grabbed the young man's jaw, forcing him to look into his eyes, reaching the deepest part. Zhu Sheng's tears were pouring out, sobbing. If they could live a pure and dignified life, who would want to sell themselves? "Don't forget, if you didn't hostage my paycheck, I wouldn't be in this position. You ruined my chance to be a good man." He gave him a glare full of accusations. That ferocious, tearful, hazy glare made Kamo-kun unable to stop. He laughed hoarsely, letting go of the other man's jaw. then gripping his flexible waist. His forehead dripped with sweat, his voice revealing a deep joy. Baby, withholding your paycheck was definitely the best decision I ever made in my life. Zhu Sheng didn't have enough strength to answer, only able to ruthlessly bite his shoulder. But that drove Zhou Kaomo-kun's movement crazier. While the two guys' feelings were gradually entering the most pleasant stage, Jihan Yu and Fang Yudan's feeling were also getting deeper. One night, while Zhou Yunsheng was out, Jihan Yu finally managed to induce Fang Yudan to start a relationship with him. As a result, he was even more eager to get rid of Lin Chengze. After winter vacation, in accordance with the prior agreement, he took Lin Chengze to a party. The sponsor of the party was Wang Yi, and the people who were invited were all rich second generations who played very openly. The location was a very private club. It was called a party, but in reality it was a sex party. Drinking, beauties, drugs, and condoms were the main themes for the party. Jihan Yu had participated a few times before, but now he planned to remain chaste for Fang Yudan. So after a few minutes, he got ready to leave. Are you coming? Although he asked, he knew that Lin Chengze certainly wouldn't leave. All the most famous local second generations were present. Just climbing onto one would guarantee a carefree life. How could he willingly let this opportunity slip by? Sure enough, Zhou Yuncheng declined. You go first. I'll stay and play. Here were the people who'd previously played with Lin Chengze, his revenge targets. Jihan Yu nodded, a contemptuous and sinister smile flashing through his eyes. After he left, Wang Ji immediately sat next to Zhou Yunsheng. He put his arms around his shoulders and urged, Little Ze, let's hit the bar. I'll introduce you to some older brothers. Many people were glancing over, overtly and secretly. Although there were many beauties present, the young man in front of them was undoubtedly the most outstanding. Such a beautiful thing. Yet Jihan Yu willingly threw him out to let everyone play. So daring. Zhou Yunsheng also didn't act shy. He walked over and personally opened a few bottles of wine, then poured out glasses for everyone, one by one. No one noticed him throwing something into the wine bottles, his speed almost invisible to the naked eye. The lights dimmed, passionate music sounded, and a model walked to the middle and started dancing erotically around a pole. Some people stood up to clap and whistle. Some walked over to grind their lower bodies against snow-white thighs and perky buttocks, performing a variety of obscene actions. There were still some people leaning forward on a table and snorting drugs. The scene was extremely depraved. In fact, they didn't need to be drugged. They could have played until they reached their own high. But the drugs added to the fun. They lost their minds much faster. In just a few minutes, except for Zhou Yunsheng, not a single person in the room was sound of mind. It was a sea of excitement, madness, close tearing, orgies. On the sofas, tables, floor, everywhere had entangled white bodies. Zhou Yunsheng picked out familiar faces, collecting an erotic memorial. There were a few whose face weren't in the picture, so he helped adjust their posture. He stuffed his camera into his bag and was ready to leave when he felt nature calling, so he stopped by the bathroom. He washed his hands leisurely, dried it, but just as he touched the door handle, his phone rang. The caller ID was Immortal Lover. Chapter 9. Where are you? The man's urgent question came through. A slamming door could vaguely be heard in the background. Jin Sheng's expression was relaxed, but his tone was confused and helpless, replying, I'm at the Han Mountain Business Club, room 108. Can you come? The other end abruptly hung up before he could finish. Jin Sheng picked up his phone and sat cross-legged on the toilet. waiting. About a minute later, the door of the club was kicked in by two black-clothed bodyguards, and Kamakun ran in, panting roughly. His face twisted when he saw the depraved scene in the room. He resisted anger and panic as he checked each body one by one. But then the bathroom door opened, and a pale young man stared out at him unblinkingly, his eyes tearful. He strode over, took off his coat, and wrapped it airtight around the young man. Then they quickly left the club, while the club's manager issued constant apologies. "Are you all right?" After boarding the car, he opened the coat and looked over the young man. If the driver and bodyguards weren't present, he would have taken the boy's clothes off and checked inside too. "I'm fine. I didn't dare touch the wine and food they gave me. I saw some people taking drugs. It scared me, so I hid in the bathroom." Soyun Cheng shrunk into a ball, obediently resting in the man's broad, warm arms, clearly frightened. "Why are you so senseless? Jian, you left. Why didn't you go with him? Do you know what those people were doing in there? Do you understand? You dare join them when you don't even understand? I'll tell you. To them, you looked like a delicious dish. They would have eaten you whole." Kamukun forcefully hugged him, gritting his teeth as he scolded. "Those guys are Jihanyu's friends. He's alienating because of his pride. But I don't think that's the right choice. The more friends he has, the more path he has. What if one of them can lend him a hand? He's starting a business. He really needs the connections." Yuan Sheng pitifully opened. Kao Mekun was angry enough to vomit blood, but he couldn't get angry at him, sneering. "I'm his uncle. If he needs a connection, he just has to come to me. Why does he need you to worry about him? You destroyed his family, and his mom almost infuriated your mother to death. How could you help him?" "Did he tell you that? He told you that I wouldn't help him, so you needed to prostitute yourself?" Kamakun narrowed his eyes, hostility bursting out from his chest. Zhuan Cheng didn't respond, but his silence was regarded as acquiescence. Kaomukun sneered. His flaming rage had no place to vent. He wanted to take out a cigarette to smoke, but refrained when he glimpsed the boy's jet-black hair. He turned to pick up his phone and dialed a number, tapping to put the phone on speaker. "What are you doing?" "I'm not doing anything." Jihan Yu's voice sounded very hoarse, with heavy panting. "Are you fucking someone?" Kawamakun interrogated, then glanced at the young man beside him, who was stiff from head to toe. "No," Jihan Yu immediately denied, then gave his lover, who was pinching him incessantly, a flattering smile. He hadn't intended to answer the phone, but when he saw his uncle's name, he pulled out and got out of bed. "You don't need to lie to me. I can hear you. If you really are in love with Fang Yudan, I won't block you." Kawamakun threw him some bait. Jihan Yu was silent for a second, then he nodded. "Okay, uncle, I really am with Yudan. Your support is very important to us. Thank you." "And Lin Shengze?" Kawamakun continued, inciting. Because Fan Yudan was next to him, listening in, Jihan Yu held back his speech, only contemptuously saying, "Who cares about him? From beginning to end, he meant nothing to me." "Okay, I see. Continue on." Kamakun hung up the phone, then grabbed the young man's jaw, forcing him to look up. He enunciated, "Look, this is the man you love. He never cared about you from the start. He's even fucking your best friend." At this point, Julian Cheng was already forcing out a face full of tears. His expression was even more desolate and desperate. He played the part of an emotionally wounded, pitiful young boy brilliantly. When Kamakun saw this look, his always cold heart shook fiercely, a painful feeling spreading out from his chest and throughout his whole body. "Why are you crying? Just a small matter, and you cry like you lost your parents? Don't you have a future?" His mouth reprimanded, but his hand was holding a napkin, gently wiping away the boy's tears. Initially, he'd planned to arrange a chance encounter in a few days to let the boy witness Ji-Han-yu having an affair with Fang Yudan, but he didn't expect Ji-Han-yu would take him to a sex party. This was a serious violation of Kawamokun's bottom line. Ji-Han-yu was only an illegitimate daughter's child. He could support him if he was in a good mood, but if he was unhappy, he'd kick him down into the abyss. Julian Shang brushed away his extended napkin, using his sleeve to casually wipe his face, accusing, "My parents are already dead. Do you want to rub salt into my wounds?" "Yes, I was wrong. Baby, don't cry. Ji-Han-yu is nothing. You still have me. Don't cry anymore." Kamekun had never comforted before, deciding that the less he said, the less mistakes. He simply held him in his arms, lightly kissing the crown of his head and forehead. Zhu Sheng clenched his teeth, saying, "Who are you to me? Don't forget our deal is expiring soon." Kamakun's breath halted at this. He remembered the original contract. Damn it. Indeed, one false step leads to another. If he knew he was going to fall into the boy's palm and never be able to climb out, he would have never made him enter such a humiliating contract. Zhu Shang didn't give him the opportunity to explain, continuing, "Give me the 300,000. I need it now, in cash." "Why? Don't tell me you still plan to throw it down the drain. Are you really that stupid? He said he had no money, so it must be true. Why won't you use your brains? Bankrupt does not mean impoverished. Rather, it's a means of preserving surplus assets. Even a starving camel is bigger than a horse. The G family may be in need, but they haven't fallen to the point where they can't even scrap together 300,000. He was completely playing with you." Kaomukun immediately forgot his tangled heart, speaking the harsh truth through gritted teeth. Zhu Sheng was silent for a long time. Finally, he shook his head. "I'm not as cheap as you think. Whether he was playing me or not, since it has come to this point, I have to end it with him." After his words fell, he discreetly glanced at his AI. He'd installed a few pinhole cameras at home in order to easily control the progression of the protagonist's feelings. The first time the two had sex, he should have promptly appeared to capture the fornicators and whatnot, but unfortunately at that time he was also in bed with Kaomo-kun, so he'd had to regretfully give up. Now that they were going at it again, he certainly couldn't miss this golden opportunity. Since he'd promised to make Ji-Han-yu experience what was true, selfless, great love, he'd unquestionably accomplish it. Kaomo-kun saw his determined demeanor and was finally satisfied. He made his bodyguards immediately go to the bank to withdraw 300,000 in cash. Zhu Sheng carried the heavy cash box and arrived at his front door. The sound of the door opening was very quiet. The two who were immersed in their love didn't notice. Zhu Sheng walked to Fang Yudan's bedroom door. His face darkened as he stared at the two gyrating bodies. Ji-Han-yu, whose back was towards him, was thrusting crazily. Fang Yudan couldn't handle it, begging, "Go lighter, slower, it hurts." Then he glanced up, and all sounds got stuck in his throat. "Little Zit!" After a long time, he screamed out, not daring to believe, reflexively pushing Ji-Han-yu off from on top of him. "You came back?" Ji-Han-yu wasn't the least bit panicked. He pulled the quilt over his lover's naked body and leisurely pulled on his underwear. "I'm back. I came back to see how you are fucking my best friend." Ji-Han-yu walked to the bedside sofa and sat down, his face expressionless. "Don't try to frame it like we're dirty and you're very holy. Didn't you just come back from joining in the sex party? How was it? Did those rich boys satisfy you? Was there money enough to stuff your thirsty little hole?" Ji-Han-yu sneered, his words piercing. Jun Sheng wasn't angry, but Kamakun, who was sitting in the living room smoking, had a sinister expression. He had no idea that his nephew was just like his mother. They both had the talent to court disaster. Sheng endured and endured, not letting himself twist off Jihan neck. He opened the cash box and hurled over bundles of banknotes, enunciating, "Didn't you urgently need 300,000? Here you go. I'm giving it to you. Not a single note missing. I filmed an ad. It's only a pair of jeans on a freezing cold day for you. I sold myself to be an old man's pet for you. For you, I even sucked up to your shitty friends, just hoping they could help you out in your time of need. I sold my body, self-respect, and even my soul. And this is how you repay me? Fucking my best friend? Taking me to a sex party and throwing me to a pack of drugged-up animals to be played with? What the hell did I do to make you retaliate against me like this?" When the bundles of banknotes smashed Jihan face, he was rendered dumbstruck. Why did he get together with Fang Yudan? Of course, it was because he hadn't looked at him with contempt or pity when he was most destitute. He hadn't deliberately distanced himself from him, hadn't abandoned him and ignored him. Instead, he did his best to help. His love was so sincere, warm, and unreserved. But the banknotes scattered all over the place plainly told him, while he was unaware, someone else paid everything for him, from their body to their self-respect, even their soul. And he tried to destroy the person in a dirty orgy. Looking at the boy's humiliated, grief-stricken, yet still remarkably beautiful face, Jihan felt as if he was fiercely slapped dozens of times, his cheeks burning painfully. "You." When he opened his mouth to talk, his voice was extremely hoarse. "Didn't you tell your friend that you only loved my money?" "Why should I tell others that I love you so desperately? This is my private matter. I thought that, as long as I worked hard enough, you would certainly see my merits and efforts. Then we could cross through difficulties hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder. But I didn't expect that Fang Yudan only needed to feed you a bit, comfort you a bit, and hand you some change in order to snatch away your heart." The teenager apparently felt very tired. He slowly leaned back into the sofa and waved his hand. "Forget it. What's the use in complaining now? Just because I said a tasteless joke, you came up with such a terrible plan to destroy me. Jihan your heart is simply rotten to the core. Take the money and get lost. Get as far away from me as you can. Looking at you makes me sick." How could Jihan have the face to take the money? As long as he thought about how the boy sacrificed his dignity in exchange for it, he'd feel pained, like a knife was being twisted into his heart. No matter how clever and ambitious he was still an underage child. His heart had weak spots. Everything Julian Cheng paid for him was plainly exposed here, and he was inevitably moved. As it turns out, Lin Chengzi didn't go out every day and come back late at night because he was playing. As it turns out, when he said he'd think of a way, it was not perfunctory. As it turns out, he wasn't fawning over his best friends because he wanted a new sugar daddy. Everything he did was for him. At that time, why didn't he see it? Why did he misunderstand him so deeply because of one sentence, even coming up with such a terrible plan? If they had sat down and properly talked, they would have never come to this point. Now, looking at the ruined, red-eyed teenager slumped on the sofa, Jihan didn't feel the slightest bit of loathing, only endless guilt and regret. If he could turn back time, he would certainly cherish him and cherish their relationship. Fang Yudan finally drilled out from under the quilt, cheeks streaming with tears. "Little Ze, I'm so sorry." "If you really feel sorry, take this dirty money and get the hell out. I never want to see you again." Julian Cheng looked at them with cold eyes. Fang Yudan actually wasn't innocent. Although Lin Chengzi made mistakes, it was a fact that he'd stolen his best friend's boyfriend. Moreover, Lin Chengzi had taken him in for several years. This kindness couldn't be offset. When Lin Chengze got caught up in the pornographic picture incident, even he could have lent him a small helping hand, just a few words to defend him. Then Lin Chengze wouldn't have been reduced to the point. In the end, Lin Chengze was also a victim, but Fang Yunan never sympathetically helped him. Instead, he treated him coldly. What the hell kind of logic was that? Was that true friendship? Jihan Yu didn't want to leave. He didn't want to break up like this. He was about to beg to stay when he saw his uncle slowly walk in, his eyes full of hostility. "Baby, are you done? Come home with me, if you're finished." He unyieldingly dragged the boy up. "Uncle, why are you here? What's your relationship with little Zhe?" Jihan Yu's original unsightly complexion suddenly became ashen as he thought of a possibility. "I'm the old man," he mentioned. "Baby, if you hadn't said it, I'd really have no idea I had such an image in your mind." He bit the boy's small round earlobe. Seeing his shrunken shoulders tremble slightly, he gave a pampering smile. Dropping a "let's leave now," he wrapped his arms around him and quickly left. It took a few minutes for Jihan Yu to recover from his shock. He looked at the scattered bright red banknotes, then covered his face, battered and exhausted, tears pouring out. He looked like he had just lost the most precious person in his life. Fang Yuran saw his heartbroken, remorseful expression and couldn't help but feel panicked. He thought that he'd invested enough in Jihan Yu. He'd given him everything he could. That was also the biggest reason why Jihan Yu was moved by him. But now, compared with Lin Chengze, he became a downright joke. If Jihan Yu broke up with him, where could he go from there? Chapter 10. Jian Sheng covered his face as soon as he got into the car, then burst into silent laughter. 300,000, not too much and not too little. Taking out bundles and smashing it in someone's face was a really exciting feeling, especially Jihan Yu's grief-stricken and regretful expression. It really amused him. Lin Shengze was made into a whore, so Zhu Yunsheng helped him avoid the pitfalls and simultaneously helped him build a chastity memorial arc. Now, not only would Jihan Yu never be able to stay with Fang Yudan with a clear conscience, he would also never be able to forget Lin Shengze in his lifetime. When his heart was gradually dyed black by the secular world, he would recall the past, would increasingly feel that Lin Shengze's love and dedication to him was selfless and precious. From now on, Lin Shengze would be the white moonlight in front of his bed, the cinder in his heart. Whenever he recalled him, his heart would ache uncontrollably. What's a reversal? This was the most thorough reversal. Kama-kun saw him clutching his face, shoulders trembling, and thought that he was crying. He helplessly pulled him into his arms, slowly saying, "Baby, don't cry. That type of person isn't worth your tears." Zhou Sheng leaned on him, unmoving, not saying a word. Kama-kun continued, "Baby, you're not my pet, and really, I'm not an old man. I'm not even 30 yet." Zhou Sheng looked up at him. A few drops of tears were hanging on his eyelashes, freshly squeezed out with great difficulty. Kama-kun felt a bit nervous because of his stare. He wanted to take out a cigarette, but recalled that the boy hated the smell, so he had no choice but to hold back. He continued, "Baby, that contract is void. We can start again and have a healthy, equal, and happy relationship. What do you think?" Zhu Sheng stared at him for a long while, then buried his face in his bosom and muttered, "I don't think it'll work. Everybody knows that you, Kama-kun, only remain interested in people for 3 months at most. I couldn't even keep Jihan Yu by my side. How can I have the confidence to keep you? Right now, I just want to study hard and get into a good university and find a safe and stable job. Kaomo-kun knew that his heart was wounded by Jihan Yu at this time. He couldn't trust anyone. He pushed his hair back quite helplessly and sighed. Then, how about we start as friends? You can see how long I'll persist. We didn't have a good start, but we can have a good future. Yuan Sheng was silent for a moment, finally nodded, then quietly added, "But you have to give back my ad paycheck first." He was now poor again, basically penniless. Kaomo-kun was relieved and somewhat unable to restrain a smile. He promised while kissing the top of his soft hair. Jihan Yu squatted in front of the Kao family's mansion's door for more than a month. He didn't even go back during the Chinese New Year. With great difficulty, he finally intercepted Kaomo-kun, who'd brought Zhou Yunsheng back after their vacation. "Baby, go in first. I'll talk to him." Kaomo-kun didn't like the way Jihan Yu looked at his lover with hot eyes, urging in a heavy voice. Zhou Yunsheng nodded and only faintly glanced at Jihan Yu as he strolled past. Jihan Yu wanted to chase after him, but was frozen by his uncle's cold and strict gaze. "Sit down. How are you doing with your little boyfriend lately?" "I'm not with him." "Why, didn't you say you really loved him before?" Kaomo-kun feigned surprise. After what had happened, how could he feel comfortable being together with Fang Yudan? As long as he looked at him, he would immediately think of the scattered red banknotes and think of Lin Chengze's red-rimmed, despairing, grieving eyes. That scene repeatedly tortured Jihan Yu and kept him awake at night. He wiped his face, dejected, then took a check out from his pocket, handing it over. "Uncle, here's 1 million. Please let little Ze go." Kaomo-kun smiled, then sighed. "Hanyu, you're really too naive. You think you can get back a treasure you've casted away? Besides, I don't lack this 1 million. To tell you the truth, buying your relationship for 30,000 was the most successful investment I've ever made in my life. Every time I think about it, I want to pop open a bottle of champagne and celebrate." The man's face filled with happiness and pleasure. He deeply stabbed into Jihan Yu, but he was helpless. He sat silent for a long time, then put away his check and slowly left the mansion's entrance. The new semester began, but a scandal broke out on the internet, bringing about a huge commotion. A group of rich second generations were captured conducting a sex party, and the photos were posted on the forums. It was extremely immoral and corrupt. Condoms, liquor, bottles, and drugs littering the floor. At that time, the election was a critical point. The Ministry of Justice paid great attention to the photographs and quickly investigated. Zhou Yunsheng had already hacked into the club's monitoring system and erased his and Kaomo-kun's figures, so this didn't affect them. Wang Yi was called away from the classroom. The charges were drug abuse and accommodating drug abuse. The students had a hot new gossip. Jihan Yu also saw these photos. He thought of how Lin Chengze would have also been forced into the pile of bodies if his uncle hadn't gotten there in time. Immediately, his whole body broke out in a layer of cold sweat. Now, he really couldn't understand why he'd chosen to use such a vicious method to destroy Lin Chengze. It was like a bout of insanity. Seeing Lin Chengze looking at him with a sneering gaze, his heart was cold and regretful. With great difficulty, he endured until the end of class, then wanted to find Lin Chengze and apologize, but found that he had already disappeared. He also didn't attend the following classes. After school, he asked around and found out that Lin Chengze had applied to study abroad. The procedures were filled a few days ago. Does he intend to never see me again? Jihan-yu stared up at the dusky sky. He finally understood the meaning of despair. 5 years later, Sea Country, a five-star hotel. Jihan-yu, who had already become a nouveau rich in the business world, entered the lobby. With his secretary, the banquet organizer immediately stepped up to welcome him. At 22 years, he was already very tall, 188 centimeters of well-built physique. Whatever he wore, he looked like a model who had just stepped out of a magazine cover. His facial features had opened up to reveal an extraordinarily handsome face. He stood there with a glass of champagne. His melancholic eyes could make anyone feel intoxicated. "Is my tie crooked?" he whispered to his secretary, frequently glancing at the door. "No, you look awesome from head to toe. Very handsome, boss." The secretary's flattery skills was very strong, but it didn't faze Jihan-yu. He glanced at a certain direction and froze, his expression slowly turning gloomy. "I'm going over there." He put down his glass and strode over, dragging a waiter who was carrying a tray into a corner. "Why are you here? What do you want to do?" he asked through gritted teeth. I heard that little Zé would be here. I want to meet him and apologize to him. At that time, I really disappointed him." Fang Yudan's eyes were bright red. He looked very pitiful. But Jihan-yu wasn't touched by his heartbroken look, fiercely scolding. "He doesn't need your apology. You'll just make him recall those unbearable memories. Don't trouble him, okay? Don't bother me either. I beg of you." "If I'll make him recall bad memories, then what about you? What image do you have in his eyes? You were the one who started that disaster," Fang Yudan refuted, unreconciled. Jihan-yu didn't reply. He slowly let go of his collar and left, his face gray. "Boss, are you all right?" The secretary hurriedly held his arm. She was about to persuade him to go rest in the suite when she heard a loud clamoring behind her. Someone said vaguely, Mr. Kao came, also with Lin Chengzi." The secretary wasn't interested in Mr. Kao. She was a fan of Lin Chengzi. She immediately forgot about her boss and craned her neck to look over the crowd, fangirling. It's Lin Chengzi, top male international model, Lin Chengzi. My Adonis." When the organizers went over to welcome them, the crowd scattered, revealing a youthful, extraordinarily handsome face. He and the taller man at his side had the same style of suit and wore matching rings and watches. When they looked at each other, there was such tenderness it was difficult for others to intrude. The secretary palmed her forehead, like she was about to faint, gushing about her Adonis to her boss. "Boss, have you seen Lin Chengzi's debut ad? It was for the classic extravagant perfume. God, my Adonis's beauty has simply broken the scale. After that ad broadcast, extravagant immediately sold out of stock. I tried everything, but I still couldn't get one." "Remember? How couldn't I remember? The reason he filmed that ad was to help me." Jihan-yu exposed a lost expression. Although the ad couldn't be broadcasted domestically, the star it caused on the European and US market was sent back to Sea Country. Jihan-yu downloaded it from the internet. Whenever he had sleepless nights, he'd watched it repeatedly. It was as if the boy had never left him. Lin Chengzi's expression when he saw his hated green peppers, the milk mustache that was always left over when he drank milk, how he carelessly kicked away his shoes and threw away his book bag when he returned home, how he bit the tip of his pen whenever he was lost in thought. During the last 2 months they spent together, he thought he'd lost interest in Lin Chengzi, but in reality he had been deeply attracted to the boy. His every minute expression and behavior was engraved in his heart. The memories he thought he didn't care about, He'd even despised them at the time, were now his bride, impossible to get rid of, forever unredeemable regrets. After losing him, he finally realized how lovely and frank the boy had been. If he'd properly cherished him, how happy could they have been? While Jihan-yu was caught up in his regretful memories, his secretary's next words ruthlessly struck a blade into his heart. Not only is my Adonis's beauty off the charts, even his character is impeccable. When Mr. Cow had the car accident and was possibly paralyzed, he actually came out of the closet to the media, saying that he'd take care of Mr. Cow for the rest of his life. How romantic. When Mr. Cow went on that one interview program, the host asked him how he was able to walk again, and Mr. Cow said that he once browsed Adonis's phone and saw that his contract was under the name Immortal Lover. He had said that he was so moved he was finally able to tear up. I cried so hard after watching that episode. In such a difficult situation, Adonis loyally stood by his lover, in the same boat, under wind and rain. Mr. Cow is really very blessed. Boss, don't you agree? The secretary clutched her heart and glanced at her boss, but found that his eyes were flushed, flickering with faint tears. I'm going to the bathroom. Jihan-yu hurriedly left the lobby and found an empty room, then wept bitterly, resembling a trapped beast. He finally understood what kind of sincere and warm relationship he'd lost. The happiness was at his fingertips, but he'd mercilessly discarded it. From now on, no one would unreservedly love him like that boy. He was deeply regretful, but he was powerless to fix the past. Chapter 11. On Jihan-yu's 12th birthday, his father brought a boy and girl home. He'd pulled their hands and walked to his side, telling him that they were his younger brother and sister, and that he should take care of them. While Jihan-yu was still dumbfounded, his mother suddenly overturned his huge birthday cake and cursed his father, resembling an uncultured shrew. She said things like, Ji Ming-chuan, what kind of thing are you? Look at yourself. You're a fat old man, nearly 50 years old. Why is a 20-something-year-old little girl giving birth to your children? Do you think you are her true love? Without my Cow family support, you're fucking nothing. Take these bastards out of my sight. His father's face had bloated like a pig liver. Jihan-yu thought he looked funny, so he laughed. His father was angered. He pointed at him and ridiculed. Bastard, what are you laughing at? Who do you think you are? Your mother called them bastards, but she's also the Cow family's bastard. Without the G family's wealth, why would anyone pay attention to you? You guys eat from me, take from me, yet still fight against me, ungrateful bastards. At that time, he scoffed at these words, but they left a deep imprint in his heart. That's why he heard Lin Chengzi say that he was just in love with his family background. When he heard Lin Chengzi say that he was just in love with his family background, he got so angry, then thought up that ridiculous plan. He told Lin Chengzi that the Ji family went bankrupt, that he had nowhere to go. His expression was very depressed, but he was laughing heartily inside. The Ji family had really gone bankrupt. All those illegitimate children that coveted the family property were probably hiding in their beds, weeping. But for Jihan-yu, it had no effect. When his mother had married into the Ji family, his grandfather had given her a lot of cash, enough for them to spend for a lifetime. He'd asked his mother for 2 million, and with his uncle's help, he'd built a factory. The profits were sizable. He'd pretended to be penniless and rang Lin Chengzi's doorbell, hoping he would shelter him. Lin Chengzi agreed, but he had started alienating him, fawning over his friends instead. Jihan-yu looked on from the sidelines, sneering in his heart. He thought that Lin Shengzi had already fallen into his trap. He'd planned to live here for a few days, then leave. But in short 3 days, Fang Yudan's selfless care touched him. So he decided to stay. He deliberately got closer to Fang Yudan, leading him into his arms, while introducing Lin Shengzi to his friends, hoping he'd fall into his showy and rotten trap. Lin Shengzi was annoyed with his friends. Even Jihan Yu had noticed, but he'd still always be available for them. At that time, Jihan Yu thought that Lin Shengzi really could endure anything for money, but the later event taught him the true reason behind Lin Shengzi's endurance. It was all for him. Jihan Yu thought that Fang Yudan had given him the purest love, but he didn't expect Lin Shengzi's love to be even more pure, even more desperate. He was like a raging fire. He was willing to burn himself to ashes for his beloved. When he loved you, he would even willingly offer up his soul. This was the type of love Jihan Yu had always desired, but he inadvertently discarded it. He slept with Fang Yudan when he saw Lin Shengzi suddenly appear, ashen-faced. He hadn't felt the slightest remorse. Why wasn't he remorseful? Whenever the scene replayed in his dreams, Jihan Yu stood in front of himself countless times, over and over interrogating himself, cursing himself, even wanting to slap himself awake. That night, the bright red banknotes were scattered over the ground, gaudy, ridiculing. Jihan Yu stood in the empty room for a long time, then knelt down and picked them up one by one, until the whole floor was clean. Holding the money was like holding a piece of branding iron. His palms were scalded, painful, but he couldn't drop it. He had to return it all. Return it 100-fold, 1,000-fold, then get Lin Shengzi back. It was only at that moment that he recalled all of the little details of being with Lin Shengzi, suddenly understanding why he loathed his friends, but still patiently socialized with them. He just hoped that they could lend him a hand when he was in need. Everything he did was for his sake. Jihan Yu didn't dare imagine all the tears and hardship he had invested behind his back. And even more, he didn't dare imagine his thoughts when he'd realized that he'd left him in a sex party to be abused. Fang Yunan helped him tidy up the money, then suddenly hugged him, crying bitterly, repeatedly shouting, "I'm sorry." Those tears that would have made him pamper him in the past now only made him feel sick. Compared to Lin Shengzi's desperate efforts, what did Fang Yudan give up? Why was he even moved by him? Just because he expressed his feelings more than Lin Shengzi? Lin Shengzi was so proud. He always said that the person who fell in love first was the loser. At that time, Jihan Yu didn't understand why that was his favorite phrase. But now he knew. When he repeated that sentence to him over and over, he was telling him, "I already lost." But his pride didn't allow him to admit it. So he told others that he just loved his money. Such an awkward temper, yet so lovely. Jihan Yu smiled, but then he started to cry. He pushed Fang Yudan away and roared at him to leave, to forever get out of his and Lin Shengzi's world. "When I look at you, I feel sick, but I'm even sicker than you are," he said with blood-red eyes. Lin Shengzi disappeared. Jihan Yu couldn't find him anywhere. He resorted to squatting at the Cao family's mansion's door, waiting. In the past, he'd only felt admiration and gratefulness for Cao Mo-kun, but now he was deeply resentful. You knew he was my boyfriend. Why did you snatch him?" Cao Mo-kun gave him a mocking smile, saying, "Buying your relationship for 300,000 was the most successful investment I've ever made." Jihan Yu had no way to fight back. After leaving, he glanced back at the house, telling himself that he must get stronger, more powerful than Kaomo-kun, so he could recapture his former lover. Still, Lin Chengze ultimately disappeared, completely gone. Since then, Jihan Yu suffered from insomnia, relying on more and more drugs to survive 3 painful months. 3 months later, a friend opened a video on his phone, asking him to watch. His behavior was very mysterious. Jihan Yu indifferently glanced at it, then was stunned. Grabbing the phone, he greedily stared at the captivating boy on the screen. Of course, it was Lin Chengze. The Lin Chengze his heart yearned for. The Lin Chengze who made him deeply regretful to love again. This ad is blowing up online. Damn it. How didn't I notice that Lin Chengze was such a fox? You introduced him to Wang Ji, but not me. What the hell, man? Oh, right. Wasn't he your boyfriend? What kind of beauty? Why did you willingly give him out? You're too daring. Jihan Yu didn't wait for him to finish before he ruthlessly struck out with a fist, his eyes full of endless hatred. Why did you willingly give him out? Why did you willingly give him out? He'd also questioned himself countless times in the past. Why did you willingly give him out? You're so stupid. His heart, he heard that buying a bottle of extravagant came with Lin Chengze's promotional poster. Jihan Yu skipped class and rushed to the nearest department store. The counter was crowded with people. Everyone was clamoring for a bottle. He was crowded out, and when he finally managed to reach the front, the salesman told him that they were out of stock. He couldn't describe the great feeling of panic he had at that time. It seemed like no matter how hard he tried, he'd never be able to touch Lin Chengze again. He walked out of the mall like a wandering spirit, standing on the street in a daze. He looked up at the giant LED screen that was broadcasting an interview with top international designer Orlando. He called Lin Chengze his goddess of beauty, Narcissus glancing at his reflection by the lakeside, Ganymede who poured wine for the gods. His appearance could make gods and kings fall. If you didn't love him, it was simply a sin. The last sentence broke Jihan Yu's heart. He didn't love him. He did love him. He just realized too late. A picture of Lin Chengze showed up on the screen. Many people stopped to look up. Even a few cars slowed down. Their eyes exposed unconcealable surprise and longing. Jihan Yu didn't dare look. He left in a trance. Eventually, he used some connections to buy a few bottles of extravagant and covered his room with Lin Chengze posters. It was as if he'd never left. From that day on, he was gradually able to fall asleep, but his dreams were plentiful. He desperately worked, hoping to overtake Kaomo-kun as soon as possible. He became an upstart in the business world. Various kinds of beauties pranced around him, but they could no longer arouse even a bit of his interest. If you once had the most precious treasure in the world, then you lost it, you would find that no other person or thing could ever enter your eyes. Lin Chengze was the best. No one could replace him. One day, after handling a very important business deal, Jihan Yu returned home, exhausted. He sat on the sofa and stared blankly at the wall, covered with Lin Chengze photos. Suddenly, the news broadcasted on a TV reported that Kaomo-kun was in a car accident. His lower body was seriously injured, and he might be paralyzed. Jihan Yu froze for several minutes. Then an insuppressible joy rose in his heart. Kaomo-kun had fallen. Maybe this meant he had another chance. What was Lin Shengzi's feeling right now? Anxious, helpless? No, I must hurry to his side as quickly as possible. Jihan Yu immediately stood up and packed his things. He emptied out his wardrobe to find his most decent suit and changed into it. He dragged his suitcase to the airport and bought the earliest flight to F country. About 20 minutes from boarding time, Lin Chingze's captivating face appeared on a TV in the terminal. He looked very haggard, but his eyes were striking. He came out in front of all the media, saying with a resolute expression, Kamakun is my lover. I love him, so I will never give up on him. I hope we can get everyone's blessings. At that moment, Kamakun became the most hated man in the world. Jihan Yu heard the teen girls who were sitting on the row over burst into grieving tears. A man angrily kicked a billboard, muttering the interview was faked. It was an April Fool's joke, etc. In this world, many people madly adored Lin Xingze, but he only loved one person. Jihan Yu laughed, laughed and laughed until tears unexpectedly flowed out. He wondered did he think that Lin Xingze would need him at this time? Why did he think that he would accept him just because Kalmukun met with misfortune? He was Lin Xingze after all. The Lin Xingze who once he fell in love with someone, he was loyal until death. His beloved will be the happiest person in the world. Refunding his ticket, Jihan Yu returned to his house, muddle-headed, then fell into bed. He had a dream. In that dream, he was sitting in the dining room in the Lin house, helping Lin Chengze pick out the green peppers in his food. Seeing him eat eagerly, he quickly poured him a glass of warm milk, then kissed his milk-drenched lips. Lin Chengze's arm wrapped around his neck, his peach blossom eyes glittering. He was so beautiful, so captivating. Jihan Yu woke up with a sweet smile. Then he looked around his cold and empty room and was brought back to his helpless reality. He'd spent 2 months hating Lin Chengze, but now he'll spend the rest of his life loving him. He always considered moving on, but he sank deeper and deeper every day. Lin Chengze had already left him behind, but he was still trapped in his dull memories, never able to move on. Lin Chengze's love was like a raging fire. His fire had burned Jihan Yu's soul to ashes, leaving only an empty shell.